Welcome, IB Nation, to another edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast, and more specifically, upon further review, it is Sunday night. It is IB After Dark, and we have dove into the film. We have watched the offense. We have watched the defense, and we're ready to
I
comment.
tried watching
on what we
special
saw.
teams, but it pissed me off too much, so I
Well,
turned it off.
It's a good thing that that's not included in the two things that I watch because I remember it very, very well, and I don't need to see it again, frankly, is how I feel about the special teams, Brian. But this is upon further review. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us tonight and every Sunday night after an Irish game. And obviously, we are breaking down Notre Dame's 28-3 victory over Miami, Ohio. And we're going to do it how we have been doing it all season. This is the first opportunity Brian gets to kind of give his comments on the game as a whole overall, since he does not participate in the post-game show. So we'll do that first. And then
I'm participating in from the standpoint of I was in the chat.
This is true.
Until I was like, I'm going to have to ban everyone. So I need to step out of here.
I know, right? Believe me. Then we will revisit the keys to victory offensively and defensively that Brian put out on Saturday morning. So we will revisit those and discuss if they were met or not met. And then we will jump into kind of our thoughts on the film itself. Were things confirmed? Did we see something new? You know, that kind of thing. Obviously, we'll go on both sides of the ball, and then we'll discuss some of the key moments offensively and defensively. So that's kind of how this show works these days, and I'm looking forward to it. And again, Brian, I say this all the time. It's a lot easier to break down film when you're talking about a win, even though there's plenty of things to work on both sides of the football. So I think that's the coach speak in me, man. It just is what it is. You know what I'm saying? So let's jump right in here with your thoughts, sir, on the game that was yesterday.
Well, here's basically my how I think the reaction should be. So how about this? First and foremost, number one, if you can't enjoy the fact that your team won by 25, then perspective is needed. If you can't look at this game and realize that there's things that absolutely need to be better and that this team can and should play better, and there are things that have to get fixed, then you also are lacking some perspective. It was a little bit of both. The issue is I don't know if we're having enough of a conversation where we're kind of talking at each other instead of to each other a little bit. And when you watch it, it's almost like I found myself jumping into the gotta defend category because some of the takes are so out there. But then you see the other side saying, like, there was a post yesterday, and it was a very well-meaning post and long explanation of basically saying, like, Riley did exactly what the coaches asked him to do. And the defense did great is another one. The defense was great. They did a great job stopping the run. And I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of the same mistake on the opposite side of the conversation, because I'm pretty sure the coaches didn't say, I want you to throw this ball 4 feet over Chris Mitchell's head. Pretty sure that's not what the staff asked him to do. You know, and so there's just different aspects to this. And here's the reality of it. The last 2 weeks, Notre Dame has outscored their opponents 94-10, and they're not playing close to their best football. The question now coming out of this game, Vince, that you have to ask yourself is this just who they're going to be? Or is there another level they're going to get to? And that's the answer I don't know. But here was basically my overall takeaway from this game. I don't think the team came out flat. That was a positive. I don't think they came out flat like they did in the Northern Illinois game. I didn't see that. What frustrated me, however, was because I think this team played hard. I think they were physical. I think they battled Miami in that regard. It was different than Northern Illinois, but here's the other part of it. They were super sloppy in all phases of the game out of the gate, which tells me even though they didn't come out flat, they didn't come out with great focus. And that's a concern. I mean, you're talking about in the first half, you've got, just run it down, you've got offensive line penalties, you've got quarterback missing easy throws, you've got run-throughs being allowed by the offense, you've got missed tackles by the defense, not hustling out to a motion by the defense, getting knocked off the ball at the D-line, some missed run fits. You have it's the first half, you've got a missed field goal on a bad snap. You have a muffed punt that gives them a short field. You run a great reverse and then get a penalty to bring it back. There was just a lot of that in this game. And that was sort of the frustration, was like, okay, this team was physically ready to play today, but they weren't mentally as locked in as they needed to be. And that's why we saw a lot of the mistakes that we saw them make. And that's where Coach Freeman is going to have to sit back, and I'm going to get into each side of the ball a little bit. But if Coach Freeman is looking at this and saying, hey, we got to figure out, he has a lot of sayings that I actually like. If they're, as long as they're, if you hold the team and yourself to that standard. Obviously, one is the gold standard. What
as long as it's not just a quote for the T-shirt, you know what I mean? You're following through on it. Yeah, right.
I was one of my college teams. We had a shirt. We had unity on the back of our shirt. It was one of the least unified sports teams I've ever been a part of. But it looked cool on a shirt,
right?
And it was a cool slogan. Number one, it's the golden standard, and part of the golden standard is being your best. Being the best you can be. And there's clearly something going on with this football team that is not allowing them to achieve that standard this season, outside of one game, really, and two games, because the opener against A&M, that's a really good win. All right, so I don't take anything away from that. And there's some disconnect between how you prepare at home versus how you prepare on the road. Something is going on that causes this team to be way more focused and way more locked in and way sharper when they're playing on the road than when they're playing at home. Last year was kind of opposite. It was, we're usually pretty locked in on home games, although I think some of the first halves, Vince, were a little bit, sloppier than maybe remember. But the difference is last year in a lot of those games, they were playing teams that weren't very good. If you think about the home games, Tennessee State was an FCS team and not very good. Central Michigan was a stinky MAC team, and Northern Illinois and Miami, Ohio are not bad MAC teams. You had Ohio State was really good, and they lost. And then you had USC, who was not very good. Notre Dame overwhelmed them. Pitt was terrible. They were 3-9. Wake Forest was terrible. So it was like, who was the good home team that you played? And you didn't really have a whole lot. Well, now you're playing two well-coached teams at home, and it just it just gets into this from the standpoint of you look like a very different team when you're playing at home than when you play on the road. I think that was my big takeaway from this team yesterday. That as a head football coach, you have to be able to look at it and say, hey, listen, because another one of his phrases is challenge everything, right? Well, you're 4 games in, you're a third of the way through the season, right? So now you can be able to look in the mirror and say, okay, why are we having these performances? Because what I don't want Marcus Freeman to fall into, and I'll be honest, the last couple, I'm trying to think how to say this. The last couple times we've heard Marcus Freeman talk, you're starting to see some Brian Kelly-isms pop into his conversations. Winning is hard, and sort of settling for a victory that was not your team's best. You know what I mean? And that's a little bit concerning. And you've got to be able to look in the mirror and say, okay, why we got 1 week to really figure this out. Because here's the thing coming out of this game. You got to figure it out next week. You got to do whatever you got to do to get a win, and then you can take a step back and really evaluate things in the bye. And hopefully they can do that. But they're going to have to figure out, Vince, a way to be more mentally locked in at home, especially these afternoon games, because you don't have necessarily the same energy as a night game. And so that was one of my big takeaways from the game. When you look at the offense, it was one of those things where it was an overall very disappointing performance, Vince, just because from the standpoint of there were so many opportunities for this offense to really run away with this thing. And it was, and look, here's what I'm going to do. So I'm not going to talk a lot about Riley Leonard today, because I don't think that there's a lot of people in a position where they can have a rational conversation about Riley Leonard. So here's what I'm going to do. And if you're not a board member, sorry, you're missing out. This is going to be for premium members only. I'm going to go through every pass play that Notre Dame ran on Saturday and break every single one down with the all 22, every single one, and show you where there was progress made, show you where there's mistakes being made, and then you can make the determination for yourself about how well he played or didn't play. Because what's happening right now is you're seeing yesterday's game that they're in people's minds. I've had this conversation, even with people that I find to be smart, rational people, where they're going to look at 3 terrible throws and they just kind of, it's like the scene from Inside Out, that little person out whose head explodes when he gets mad, right? Like
Anger.
That's all they have, and they ignore everything else.
Anger is my favorite character.
Right. And then there's other people that are just going to ignore those 3 plays and focus on the good plays. At the end of the day, here's the reality. However you feel about it, the pass game yesterday was not good enough. It's not all on Riley Leonard, but he's got to get better. The receivers have to get better. The offensive line definitely has to get better, especially the left side, because your quarterback does not at all feel comfortable throwing to his left right now, or even stepping to his left right now. And then there's just other aspects where you're just not being aggressive enough, in my opinion. And then you hear the head football coach before the game say, well, this is a good defense. They force you to be methodical. Miami of Ohio should not force you to do anything. And then you come out and you get the deep ball to Riley, to Bo Collins for the touchdown. And then we don't really see that a lot. Vince, if you were sitting where I was sitting yesterday, and I'm not sure if you noticed this from the film you saw, there were 6 or 7 opportunities they could have just dropped back and thrown a deep ball, just like the one they did on the touchdown pass. And they threw it once. They threw it once more after that touchdown pass, and it hit Bo in the hands. And he was. I thought it should have been PI, but he also needs to fight for the ball a little bit better. And it's just one of those things, Vince, where all aspects of the offense have to get better, because it's like 7 or 8 plays that if you go back and say, boy, if you could change those 7 or 8 plays, this team hangs 50 on Miami of Ohio. But that's what we said about Northern Illinois. It's what we said about Texas A&M. It's what we said about every game except Purdue. And right now, Purdue's the anomaly, because these same 6, 7, 8 plays keep happening every game, and it's different person each time. So like the first drive where they get into field goal range and muff, like Riley made some good plays on that drive, but you can't have those easy misses, because if you don't have those easy misses, you're creeping up on the red zone, and you may go up 7-0 early instead of the travesty of a field goal attempt that we saw on that particular play, right? You can't have those mistakes. You can't be backed up and Bo Collins is about to come open on a stop route, but your quarterback is scrambling for his life before Bo even gets out of his break. You just can't keep having those mistakes over and over again, where a receiver just comes off the line, telegraphs a route. It's the good call, but the DB never threatens. So boom, he just kind of sits. And I'll just say this. Somebody said something in the chat. I am so glad that Riley Leonard hit that go ball for a touchdown, because I was waiting to come into the chat today and be like, how come Mitch Jeter's the only person that threw a deep ball against Miami of Ohio?
That's great.
So I was happy to see them take.
Which, by the way, he's got a little bit of a stronger arm than I anticipated.
Yeah,
just saying.
But like here's the thing. You had opportunities in that game, and like we're already seeing it in the chat, right? Like just people want to talk about one part of the game while ignoring the fact that there's another part of the game that is happening. And this is why I'm going to do what I'm going to do on the board, because you can see it, Vince, in the chat. People are completely incapable of having a rational conversation about this.
Yep.
Completely incapable of it. And so that's why we're going to go through every play, because there's a lot of things that have to get better, from the quarterback to the left side of the line, to some of the play calling aspects of it, to the receiver route running. And the thing that concerns me about this, Vince, is because here's the positive. It's all fixable. But you're getting into the point now, Vince, where you're in game 4, and you have to be able to ask yourself, is it going to get fixed? Or is this just kind of who they are? They're just going to be a team that is just sort of a mediocre passing team that'll hit some plays here and there, but they're going to dominate you on the ground. And if that's not there, maybe a long day. That's the reality of it, because however you feel about how he performed, You know, because again, you're seeing some people they just put his passing numbers and pretend like he didn't have 143 rushing yards. You know, and that's the whole point is there's not a lot of people trying to have an honest conversation here. But what everyone should be willing to agree upon, and I think we would be more willing to agree upon it if people were willing to be a little bit more open-minded and have a rational conversation about, is we should all be able to come to this conclusion. The quarterback has to play better in the throwing game. Has to. But he's not alone. There's a lot of things that have to get better in the throwing game. And that's where we need to be focusing on right now if you're a Notre Dame coaching staff. Is we made some strides. We did some things better in this game than we had in the past. But especially like with the deep ball, you hit the big play to Bo Collins. You had 3 other deep balls that resulted in 15-yard penalties by the defense, which don't get factored into the statistics, but they were huge in this game. But then the throws you were hitting last week, you're missing this week, right? That's the frustrating part of it. And there's just going to have to be some things that get fixed out in this game. But then there's some other things about reads that I thought were better. So I'll break all that stuff down in that film breakdown tomorrow, and people will be able to see, because you say, well, you're saying this and you're saying this, and this person's saying this thing and this. Okay, fine. Let's look at the film. You guys want to see the film that we're watching. You guys are all, hey, I want to watch all 20. Well, I'm going to show you every passing play they had, with 2 exceptions. I'm not going to do the shovel or the tunnel screen because there's no read there. It's not part of what we're trying to have a conversation about. So we'll put that in there, but you look at the offensive line, offensive side of the ball, you were basically missing 2 starters from the previous game, and you went out and ran for 270 yards. That's a positive. That's a good takeaway. I'll say this, Vince, we'll talk. I know we'll talk about the line later, but I'm very hard on Pat Coogan. Very hard on Pat Coogan. It was the best game Pat Coogan's ever played in Notre Dame uniform, in my opinion. And it's not close. Now, you can say whatever you want. It's Miami, Ohio. Okay, I've seen him play MAC teams before. Mm-hmm. I've seen him play FCS teams before. Yeah. And he's never played as well as he played on Saturday against Miami of Ohio.
And I think what's asked of him at the center position, and you and I have talked about this a little bit. I think we talked about it a little bit last week. What's asked of him at the center position, I think, fits what he needs to be good at Notre Dame. In that, and what I mean by that is he's going to be doubling most of the time. Whereas at guard, sometimes you're doubling, sometimes you're by yourself, right? Most of the time at center, you're helping somebody else out. Okay, you might help out and then climb or something like that. Fine, cool. But your initial push is usually going to be with somebody else.
And you're playing in tighter spaces.
100%.
That's a big key.
I feel like for him, look, what were we critical of him in the past? Some of his footwork, not being super strong at the point of attack. Couldn't move. Exactly.
Couldn't move people. He was moving people Saturday.
Yeah, he was 100%.
Well, no, I mean, I get that. That's true. That helps him overall. But the reason I'm saying I thought this was his best game, because there were blocks where he wasn't getting a lot of help, and he was moving people off the ball.
Yeah,
and those are things that
he just looks so much more comfortable to me too.
That's exactly as a center. Yeah. I mean, very positive. It's certainly. So we have a game and a half of Pat Coogan playing center, and it's like, okay, so far so good. Rocco came in there and battled and did some good things. You had Cooper Flanagan go down early in the game, and you had to play through that. And then so offensively, there was a lot of things that you say, man, they got to clean this stuff up big time. And the concern is, man, if they don't start showing, like, here's the thing. In each of the last 2 games, they have shown progress in the passing game. But it's been, like, I wouldn't call it incremental, but it's not big. It's not big progress, but it's progress. Anyone that's being honest should be able to watch the film and say it's progress. But it's more, I don't say baby steps. Is that fair to say, Vince? It's more of baby steps. And it's kind of like, yeah, but you're going into game 5 now.
Right.
And this was game 4. I'm expecting more than baby steps by game 4.
Sure.
And so that's where I'm coming from, is we need to be able to acknowledge, hey guys, like here's a perfect example of the irrational aspects of this. And this is from someone who I like, and has been a member of our site, for a long time. I'm gonna bring up this comment to kind of show you what I'm referring to, because this is why I say when people get mad and say that you're talking about they don't like when you start talking about emotion. I'm going to try to find this this comment. So this comment says, talks about Riley Leonard. He goes, does our coaching staff look at the stats? Leonard wants to run more and throw less. His passing numbers have trended downward and his running stats trend upwards. We brought in a running QB who's like to throw on elite teams. And so here's what I pointed out. It's like, okay, first 2 games, Riley Leonard had a 61.3 completion rate. Actually, I'm going to bring this post up, Vince, so people can see the numbers of what I'm talking about. So first 2 games, Riley Leonard completes 61.3% of his throws. And let me just pull this up here real quick so people can see this. This is an example I'm talking about. Okay, so Riley goes out there in his first 2 games and he has 61.3% completion rate, 8.4 yards per attempt, 5.2 yards per or 8.4 yards per completion, 5.2 per attempt, 80.3 yards per half. The reason I went per half is because the Purdue game skews things because he only played a half because they were at 42 to nothing. So this allows you to get a little bit of a concept. And 0 touchdowns passing, 1 touchdown rushing, 2 interceptions. He only averaged 39.5 rushing yards per game. They averaged 50 yards of offense per half, and he averaged 50 yards of offense per half and 4.7 yards per play. It means any pass attempt or run. In the last 2 games, Riley's rushing has jumped up from 39.5 per game to 121.5 per game. He's got a 4.6% higher completion percentage. He's got a 1.5% or 1.5 per completion jump. He has a 1.3 higher yards per attempt number. He's gone up over 8 yards per half higher. He has 1 passing touchdown, 5 rushing touchdowns, no interceptions, 1 lost fumble. He averaged 50 yards per half and 4.7 yards per play. In the first 2 games, 84.8 yards per half and 8.0 yards per play. Now, here's the thing. First thing about all those numbers, none of those are even close to being good enough as a thrower at Notre Dame. Not even close. But here's the point. This was as he runs more, he throws less. No. As he's run more, he's thrown better. And if you look at the game on Saturday, his first official rushing attempt didn't come, I don't believe, until after he had a couple of those misses in the first quarter. And then as he starts running, Vince, he starts throwing better. For example, Riley Leonard finished the game 11 of 15 for 132 yards and drew a 15-yard pass interference penalty. So they've got to figure out ways to get him more consistent because I've heard this. Well, if you take out the first quarter, Riley was pretty good. But you can't take out the first quarter. And the first quarter doesn't kill you against Miami of Ohio, but if you have a quarter like that against Louisville next week, you may not be able to catch up to Louisville. You may not be able to catch up to USC. And if somehow, some way you're able to make the college football playoff, you're definitely not going to keep up to Texas if you have those kind of mistakes in the first quarter. Can't go a quarter and a half where your offense doesn't get rolling in those games. You can't have 0 points halfway through the second quarter against those teams. You get what I'm saying, Vince? So that's the thing is like there needs to be a conversation to be had of like, look, he's got to get better. I think he knows that. And they've got to figure out a way to push the right buttons, Vince, because you can't do these baby steps in it because it's like, okay, well, at the incremental rate they're growing, by the time they get to the college football playoff semifinals, he should be rocking and rolling. You're going to need him to be better way before then. You know what I mean? And that's basically where it's at. And then the offense as a whole, offensive line's got to get better on the left side. Receivers have to compete for the ball better. That was a big takeaway that I saw on Saturday events. Defensively, we won't spend too much time on the defense in this regard. It's funny, Vince, how people can come out of this game and be really upset with the defense for a performance in which they held an opponent to 229 yards of offense and 3.6 yards per play and only 3 points. You know, but then you watch and you're like, yeah, they can play a lot better and should play a lot better. But think about the bar you've set for yourself when you hold opponent to 229 yards of offense and 3 points, and people are like, man, you just really didn't bring it today. You didn't play well today. And then you watch the film and you're like, yeah, they didn't actually in a lot of ways play all that well today. Well, but still dominated. And they did. That's an encouraging thing. And here's why I say that, Vince, because what you saw yesterday was the talent level on this defense is so much greater than it used to be.
Right.
Because in the past, when the defense would have games where they weren't as sharp and they didn't execute as much, and I think there's legitimate reasons why they didn't execute as well in this game, because you had some new guys and some young guys playing and things like that. And those aren't excuses; those are explanations. But when your talent level is what it is, you can have those mistakes and still dominate. And that's what kind of encouraged me about the play of the defense is say, look, I can be upset about the mistakes they made and the things they got to do better. And they absolutely do. And still come away saying like, but man, they were still pretty dominant in this game. But again, next week against Louisville, and this is the point that I was making to somebody, you say, well, they only ran for 110 yards. I get that, but they shouldn't have given up anywhere close to 110 yards against this team. And even though it was only 110 this week, but you gave up over 5 yards of carry to their running backs, if you play that way against Louisville next week, but you got to be careful with that conversation, because then I can say, well, but if they play the way they did against Purdue the week before, they'll beat Louisville by 3 touchdowns.
And I don't even think that shouldn't even be the argument. It's just in a, we're looking at this game, right?
This game.
That's the thing. Miami specifically came into this game with such a low bar for what they've been doing on the ground that I think it was like 75 yards that they put up in the first half was like, whoa, what's going on with these guys? You know what I mean? Because I think they had 60 some yards total in 2 games running the football. And, so you expected Notre Dame to just absolutely shut them down. And when they didn't, all of a sudden red flags start going up and then the overreactions begin. And I shouldn't even say overreactions. They shouldn't have allowed that much. I mean, they shouldn't have, right? But they did. And so that's where, yes, they only gave up 3 points. Yes, they only gave up 200 some yards of total offense. I think only 110 yards it ended up being on the ground, something along those lines. Because in the second half, they absolutely shut down Miami, right? And that's what's like, you're thinking to yourself, okay, that's what it should have been like in both halves. So then you start asking yourself, okay, what's the explanation for why it happened in the first half, right? And again, when you win a game like
really
this,
first quarter is what I would say.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah, but then you won the game. You were pretty much dominant defensively as a whole, but now you can go back and be like, look, fellas, yes, we were dominant. We got to get this cleaned up.
Yeah, but that's my point, Vince, is that is a good feeling to be in as a coach.
Yes.
When you consider, boy, we absolutely dominated this football game and held them to 229 yards of offense. And let's be honest, a chunk of that came late in the game when it was 28-3. They didn't go over to the 200-yard mark, Vince, I don't think, until it was let me look at the play-by-play here real quick. I think it was either 21-3 or might have been 28-3 when they finally went over the 200-yard mark. So they went from the 47 to the 16 on their last drive, in which the game ended after it was 28-3. So they were sub 200 going into the last drive when Notre Dame put their
second team in.
Right.
I mean, they had
no, I'm sorry. That was the Notre Dame offense. They only gained 2 yards in their final drive.
Oh, okay.
So that's they went over 200 on the drive before Notre Dame made it 28-3. But it was still late. The game was basically already over.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And so that's a good thing to say. It's like, look, there are things to clean up, and we'll dive into some of those things here later in the show. But overall, the young talent really impressed me yesterday. The guys that need to step up the most are the veterans, and that continues to be true. And that's a troubling thing for me, because that's like, say Drake Bowen's got to get better here, and Adon Schuler needs to not make this mistake. Well, you expect those things from sophomores. You don't expect those things from 5th and 6th year seniors, and that's a little bit of a troubling aspect of it. Yeah. So that's kind of worse. So I mean, overall takeaways, they just weren't focused against a team they knew was bad. I mean, and that's not an excuse, Vince. That's a frustrating aspect of this, because this was an opportunity for you to have back-to-back games where you were able to get your starters rest before a big game against Louisville and then a bye. You could have come out of that bye super fresh,
right? Because
you got back-to-back games where you limited your snaps for your veterans. But because once again, this team came in against a clearly perceived inferior opponent and just kind of thought this team was going to lay down and die, we saw Vince, because this Notre Dame football team thinks They play like they think teams fear them, but teams do not fear them. They have to force teams to fear them. And they're not doing that. They're letting these teams hang around. And that's something where it's frustrating. It is frustrating to see that continue to happen. And that was a big takeaway. But again, the other thing is this is a really talented football team that even when they don't play well, dominates people. And it's a good place to be. It's a good place to be. So I'm happy with the win. I'm not happy with some of the play. And that's kind of where I'm at.
Before we move on to the next segment, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends, and of course, jump on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. I don't know, we could have made it any more clear that there's going to be some good stuff over there. And if you're not a member of the board, I mean, you're not gonna get it. You're not gonna get the play-by-play breakdown.
This is one of those things
put out there.
I'm gonna plug it right now, Vince. You are not gonna want to miss this. It's gonna be all 22. I'm gonna have charts showing the routes and all this kind of stuff. It's gonna take me all night today and tomorrow to get it done, but I figure that's the best way to really go over the film and show, okay, this is why I say there was good things to take out of this game, but this is also why I say there's things that have to get better coming out of this game. And if you're someone who actually cares about learning the game and actually seeing things and maybe saying, hey, you know what, let me at least be open-minded about this. It's going to confirm some things that you have in your head, and it's going to show you some things like, oh, like a friend of mine, perfect example, the post route to KK Smith. On TV, he said it looked like, not KK Smith, Chris Miller. So on TV, it looked like Riley missed him. And they got lucky. And I showed him on the all 22 that the pass was right on point, but the pass interference jerked him inside and made the ball go over top where it wouldn't have gone. And you show him that film, he's like, okay, I see it now. That was actually a good ball. And it forced that guy. If that guy doesn't interfere with Chris Mitchell, it's a 50-yard touchdown. You know what I mean? So it's like you see those things like, okay, I'm still not happy about that. I'm still not happy about that. I'm still not happy about that, which is how you should feel. But you know what? That was good. That was good. That was good. That was good. Let's see if they can kind of build on this next week and have some success against Louisville. And so you'll get a chance to see that for yourself. Instead of taking my word for it, see it with your own eyes and challenge yourself to learn more from it. And that's what every fan should want to do, in my opinion. So you can find that at boards.irishbreakdown.com. That'll be up sometime tomorrow. I don't know when. So whenever I get it done is when it's going to be ready to go.
Bryan, let's jump into the keys to victory for the offense. And we do this every week. We're going to go through the keys to offense, and I'll read what you wrote, and we will decide. We will then talk about whether Notre Dame achieved, got the good old check mark for that key, or whether they did not. And here we go. So, key number 1. Start fast. Notre Dame had its first fast start of the season last weekend when it scored 14 points in the first quarter against Purdue and had 3 touchdowns on its first 5 possessions. Even before the Irish put the game away with a late first half interception return for a score, the offense had put up 28 points. There's obviously a lot more written there, but there it is. Start fast. Did Notre Dame start fast in this game? I can't even say it with a straight
big face. Fat freaking minus. No, they didn't. They didn't. No. And look, the first drive, you somewhat understand they were backed up in their own territory because a muffed punt forced the defense to make a big stop, and they start their first drive at their own 4. Okay, whatever. Still, you're supposed to be a championship team. You got to start putting some drive. I mean, hey, you had Northern Illinois backed up even 2 yards closer to the end zone a couple weeks ago, and they went 98 yards for a touchdown, right? Like,
truth.
You want to see something. They didn't even get a first down. They had to punt. It was like first time you're like, okay, James Rendell might be okay, right? Because he punts from his own 10 and they flips it to the 37-yard line. You're like, okay, all right, boom, that one. You come out your next drive. You get into Miami territory. You have some big misses, some mistakes from the O-line that get you into a 3rd and 20 situation, and you get 12 back to get in the field goal range, and you miss it. And there was a play in there that that we talk about. This is why I want to see take maybe more of a chance here. You miss a field goal, you muff a field goal, just a sloppy finish to the drive.
Very.
You come out and drive 3, Vince, and you go 3 and out in your third drive. After Miami of Ohio just took a 3-0 lead.
Right.
You go 3 and out.
Yeah.
Right. Now your defense forces its own 3 and out. Great job, D. And that's when the offense woke up and scored on their next 2 drives to pretty much put the game away at that point in time. Well, and for Miami, Ohio, Vince, it was enough to win the game. This is why I said in my game observation, they did enough to win. But again, if you're projecting forward, like that's not good enough to beat some of the better teams on your schedule. Because you don't throw the ball well enough to come from behind 17-0. You don't have Brady Quinn against Michigan State in 06 or 05 for that matter, where he can go throw for 400 yards and get you back in that game. You don't have that, and so you've got to start faster. And this is another game in which Notre Dame failed to start fast.
Right.
And it cost them.
I will say, and I know we're talking about starting fast and all that. I mean, the first 3 possessions were awful. I mean, they were awful. I mean, let's be honest. They were awful. And here comes the but, right? Here they had 7 possessions after that. So they had 10 total possessions, but the 7 possessions after that, they go touchdown, fumble, which I'm sorry, probably would have been a touchdown, okay, because they made it down to the Miami 14 when he fumbled it.
Yeah, he has like a 43-yard run.
I mean, look, they would have scored on that drive. I know they didn't, and so you can't say that they did, but offensively, I feel like they would have scored on that drive. So the next 7 possessions, you would have punted twice and scored 4 touchdowns, maybe 5 or 4 and a field goal. So they started off horribly, but then as an offense,
in both halves,
yes, correct. But the next 7, I believe they score on 5 of the 7. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm not, again, it's not an excuse. It's just a fact. That's how the next 7 drives went.
Right. Now, what Notre Dame needs to figure out a way to do is start fast and finish strong. Yes. That's what the best teams do, right?
100%.
Like that.
Yes.
That's what top 10 teams do.
Yes.
Top 20 to 25, top 20 teams do what Notre Dame did yesterday.
Fair.
Top 10 teams figured out early and put teams away. And that's why right now Notre Dame's not a top 10 team.
Yeah.
But again, like you said, they did respond well. And I do think this offense did a better job of kind of waking up a lot sooner than they did against Northern Illinois 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, agree with that.
And obviously that was a positive. But you had that second drive, the first drive of the third quarter, Vince. I was like, they're going to put this thing away. As you see Riley taking off, and you're like, he completes 2 balls in a row, and then he takes off for a big gain, and then pops out, and you're just like, this drive perfectly summarizes this Notre Dame offense.
I know, right?
Because they're so close all the time to just this thing could really go off. And you say to yourself, man, you say to yourself, like in moments of excitement, like when the light goes on, this team's going to be really dangerous. But you're now at the point now where it's like you get less optimistic each week about whether or not the light is going to go on. And if it does, is it a 1-game thing? Or is it, okay, this team figured it out, now watch out? That's what we don't know. Everybody has their opinions of what they think is going to happen, but right now it's opinions we don't know. And that's the frustrating part of it, is it's just always something, and they're going to have to figure that out. And it's leading to why they just don't get fast starts. So this has been a key to victory for me for 2 years now. And this is in 4 games this year, it's been, they've got a minus in 3 of the 4.
Mm-hmm. Key number 2, outside receivers must step up. This key has 2 important aspects to it. The first is practical to this game. Miami, Ohio plays its second safety down a lot in hopes of slowing down the opponent run game. And this is especially true on first and second down. When you consider how Notre Dame's offense has been so run-heavy thus far and how much the pass game has struggled, it wouldn't make sense for Miami, Ohio to change this and play 2 high safeties. If they show what we saw in film the first 2 weeks, the outside receivers are going to get plenty of opportunities to make plays. They'll need to come off the line with urgency, be sharp on their out and comeback routes, and compete hard for the football in inevitable one-on-one situations they'll be put in. You want me to continue with the big picture part of it, Brian?
I think we have the idea of it.
Okay.
Here's the question, Vince. How do you think this is? I have a hard time grading this one because my initial thought is minus,
Mm-hmm.
All right, because it says what? Outside receivers have to play well.
Yep.
Okay, you break down the film, you look at it, say, okay, number one, one thing the outside receivers did a really good job of in this game, they blocked their freaking butts off. Bo Collins, Chris Mitchell, both of them blocked really well downfield. Okay, you're still pass catchers. All right, well, Bo had 4 catches for 60 yards and included a 38-yard touchdown that really kind of gave them a push. Chris Mitchell had his best game at Notre Dame so far. He had 2 catches for 25 yards. Should have had 2 more, but the ball didn't come his way or it was thrown inaccurately. He also drew a 15-yard penalty on a play where he beat a guy on a post route. Bo had another post route where he should have got a ball on a post route, Vince. The 3rd and 20, I'm going to show that play. He's got Riley's got to let that go.
The one where he went to Great House?
Yep. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
It's a good throw to Great House, but it was 8 yards shy of the first down.
But here's the thing, though. That 12-yard gain got them in field goal range. So I'm not going to crush Riley for making that throw because you get you in field goal range. But
I like that throw. Are we going to talk about it later? Because I don't want to jump on it. But.
No. Okay. We can quickly mention it now. So, but like my thing is that's one of those ones we talk about. I'm okay maybe throwing a pick there because you took a chance down the field on 3rd and 20 at near midfield.
Gotcha.
You get what I'm saying? Where Bo has a step, launch it, give him a shot.
Right.
Okay, you don't get in field goal range, but like that's what I want to see though. I want to see that. Hey, my guy's got a step. Let me give him a shot. So I actually think the outside receivers played relatively well. We didn't see a ton of Jordan Faison. He needs to do a much better job on that go ball. It was good awareness by Riley. Well, actually, before we move on to that, I know you wanted to say something about that throw, Vince. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say what I did like, because we're talking about Riley Leonard taking steps and progressing, the way he stepped up in the pocket and threw that ball with authority, on the money, put it in front of Great House, allowed him to make that catch on the run. I liked the execution of the throw that he made, right?
Yes.
Completely agree with you that he should have
gone. He has not made in other, like there's 2 plays I've shown him breakdowns, Vince, where he didn't make the read I want him to make on a deep ball. He came on, it was the burst corner against A&M where he threw an in cut to Chris Mitchell. And then there was the climb route that Jaden Harrison had last week against Purdue where he threw an in cut to Jaden Thomas. Both times he drove the ball into the ground and missed. On this one, he stepped in the pocket and let it rip and hits Jaden Greathouse right in the money. They get 12 yards and now you're in field goal range. He's not the reason that they muffed the field goal.
Correct.
I totally agree. My coaching point to him was, hey, that's a time for us to take that shot there.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I want 7, not 3. I think Riley took the smart play. I want to see him be a little bit more aggressive there.
Yeah.
And I'll show it on film when I'm talking about there tomorrow, Vince. So I'm not giving him a minus for that play.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, nice job, but when we've got this step, you've got to give your guys a chance to make plays.
Yep.
And so, but so you think about it, like you had the touchdown pass. Your outside receivers drew 2 pass interference penalties, 15-yard pass interference penalties, and one-on-ones. I still want to see Jordan Faison. He got outside, Vince, but he stayed outside of the corner and then drifted when the ball left Riley's hands. Jordan fades outside, and then as he jumps, he kind of jumps back. He doesn't compete for the ball at all. The difference between that throw and the throw to Bo Collins is once Bo got on top of that guy, Bo stayed on top of that guy and stayed vertical, and Jordan faded. So it looks like, it was badly underthrown ball. It was slightly underthrown, but if Jordan Faison runs a better route there, that's a big play. So I actually thought the outside receivers, though, as a whole, I thought they played good football. There was misses that the quarterback had where he should have taken a couple shots and not throw the ball over Chris Mitchell's head. Chris Mitchell played better than 2 catches for 25 yards. Again, he also had the 15-yard PI. I felt Bo Collins played better than 4 catches for 60 yards. But again, you can't throw the ball to yourself. The only criticism I have of those 2 is Chris is telegraphing his top ends way too much. And I want to see Bo compete for that deep ball that he only got. He put out one hand and it hit him in his hand. It's a perfect throw. He was kind of fight. I need to see him fight with that second hand to get through or go win an Oscar. If I tried and he's yanking me, good veteran receivers need to do those type of things. And that was my only my only kind of critique with Bo in this game was that particular play. Overall, I thought Bo played a pretty good game, and I thought that Chris Mitchell took a step. So overall, I think the outside receivers played well. I don't think the game plan was geared towards getting them as many touches as they maybe could have, it was my initial thought. But when you go back and watch the film, there was a lot more opportunities for them to make catches. Ball's going to come their way. And that's what we say. Sure. There were some things Riley Leonard did well in this game, and there's still too many throws he's not hitting right now. He's not even attempting, and that's going to be the next step. And so overall, I give it a check here, Vince. I give it a plus, like not like I give it a check, like they played well,
not a plus.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? Like, I mean,
I'm right. No, I'm right with you. I also grade them on their blocking as well, and I thought that they did a good job on blocking. I think they've done it. Honestly, I think they've done a pretty decent job blocking all season, but now they're starting to get some opportunities in the pass game, which allow them to make some more obvious plays to people, right? And so I think they actually did play pretty well. There was a couple of times where I think the ball could have gotten to them, but Riley Leonard was running for his life at times too.
There were some of those too.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's not on the receiver's fault. It was the one where Riley, he drops back to pass, he steps up in the pocket, and he ends up having to run. And I don't think he got sacked on this one, or maybe he did, but he starts running up the middle and then it gets kind of caught from behind or from the side.
Yes,
Bo Collins was going to be wide open on
he
comeback.
The route.
But there was no way.
I felt Bo was open on the first pass of the game from inside your own 10. Bo was running a comeback, did a nice job of getting separation out of his break. Riley was looking at him. That's where he wanted to go. But then they gave up a pressure. He has to step into the pocket and scramble. So it wasn't and if you look at it, he was running before Bo got out of his break.
Exactly. And that's
but that's got to get fixed. But there was also some times where he's just got to see it better.
Sure.
And get the ball out. And so those are the things I say, like, guys, they're close, but after a while, when you start saying, hey, they're really close, but the same things keep happening, okay, are they actually going to fix it or not? We don't know the answer to that. But for this game, they fixed some things. Last week, all everybody talking about, doesn't throw the ball downfield, do the ball a lot downfield a lot Saturday.
Mm-hmm. And most of the time, something good happened.
38-yard touchdown pass, 3 15-yard pass interference penalties. If they don't interfere with Mitchell Evans, he definitely catches that ball for about a 40-yard gain. If they don't interfere with Chris Mitchell, that's probably a touchdown. And then what was the other one? Faison. If Faison plays that better, it's a big catch. But if they don't interfere with him, then it's another 50-yard gain. So now it's about, okay, now do that without taking a step back on the quick game stuff. Like that's the frustrating part. You know what I mean?
Right. And we'll definitely talk about that.
Yeah.
Too.
But I thought the outside receivers did a solid job. They didn't dominate the way I think they could have. I don't know that I put that on them, though. You can't throw the ball to yourself. Nor can you pass pro for yourself.
Agreed. Key to victory number 3, be physical. Miami, Ohio is a well-coached football team, and they play hard.
Those Miami, Ohio alums get real pissed off when you say of Ohio. They get real upset about that.
Sorry. Miami in Ohio? Is it just a bad preposition? Like, I don't
Miami University. How about that?
Yeah, there you go. MU. All right. MU is a well-coached football team, and they play hard, but they're very undersized.
You can also just say Miami.
I know.
People know what we're talking about.
I know. The Red Hawk defensive line weighs an average of 264.3 pounds compared to Notre Dame's offensive line that weighs an average of 306 pounds. This mismatch is even greater inside, with a two deep at defensive tackle averaging 269.3 pounds against Notre Dame guards and center that weigh an average of 315 pounds. Notre Dame needs to play bully ball against the undersized Miami line and dominate in the run game.
I would call 36 carries for 270 yards, 7.5 yards per carry bully ball and bullying a team and being look, even like I thought Sam Pendleton didn't play a good game on Saturday. I didn't think he played well at all, but he was physical. Yeah. I didn't think Anthony Knapp played well, but he competed. He just didn't play well.
Sure.
I think from the center onto the right side, we'll talk about them later. I thought there was some tight end blocking that was woefully
tight end blocking that was really bad.
offensive line, I thought, I mean, again, guys, the numbers sometimes can lie to you. In this case, they don't. 36 carries for 270 yards, 7.5 yards per carry. Miami of Ohio was keying the heck out of the Notre Dame running backs, which is partly why Riley Leonard went off the way he did, was because they were keying on the offensive, the running backs a bunch and giving him pulls, and he took full advantage.
I want you to explain this. I think I attempted to at one point yesterday, and I think I just got frustrated. People are, the people that don't want Riley Leonard, okay, they're saying, okay, bench Riley Leonard and give those carries to the running backs instead. Can you explain, probably more eloquently than I can, why a quarterback who can run the football in the manner that Riley runs the football gives you an advantage in the run game as opposed to just giving those carries to the running backs?
Well, I'll say this. There's two answers to that question, Vince. Number one is, if you were to tell me you're going to put in a quarterback that I think can rip a team up throwing the football, then I would say, okay, make that move. If you had a veteran quarterback backing him up that was ready to step in, or a true freshman that you trusted, or a redshirt freshman that you trusted to put in there, and that guy was going to drop back and run the RPO game and make those throws, I'd say, okay, you need to consider doing that, right? Because there's things you can do with the throwing game to protect the backside. The problem is, that's not who you'd be putting in the game. You'd be putting in the game that doesn't, a guy in the game that doesn't have that ability to make those plays with any consistency. And so what you're going to have is they're going to defend Notre Dame very similarly to how they did last year. So last season, the way that Notre Dame teams defended Notre Dame's run game is they would load up basically what they thought was call side, and then they would crash hard off the backside, knowing that Notre Dame had no read zone threat at all to what they were doing. And so you give those backs, the ball, and all of a sudden teams are going to play them kind of like what Miami did yesterday, where they crash hard. Whenever the back would go a direction, they'd crash hard that direction. And I mean, there was how many times do we see Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price get hit in the backfield as Riley Leonard's pulling the ball and running? Well, if you didn't have his ability to run, then they're just getting hit in the backfield, because teams are keen on it, and their offensive line is – here's the thing some of you are going to have to come to grips with. However you feel about Riley Leonard right now, you don't have the offensive line right now to put a drop-back quarterback in the game and say, have at it, Hoss. You don't. Because right now, that's his ability to run and make plays is what keeps teams honest against your elite running backs. That's the reality. Now, he's got to still play better. But you are not getting the blocking, especially from the left side, with the consistency needed to just line up and run on people without the threat of quarterback, because you don't have Joe Alt playing left tackle and you don't have Blake Fisher playing right tackle. Although I thought Emil Wagner, Emil last week had the best game of his career last week. I thought it was better than on Saturday. Like, I think Emil Wagner's literally gotten better in every single game he's played so far. I don't know if you agree with that, Vince, but
I do.
And
he plays with more confidence too. I mean, you can just see it.
He's not as dominant. He is yet to be as dominant as Blake was last year in his best games. I've yet to see Emil Wagner be as dominant in 4 games as Blake was against Ohio State last year. But he has been very consistent and steady. So I'll just say this: you don't have Joe Alt at left tackle where you can just run behind a star. I mean, you guys see what he's doing in the NFL. He's a star. So you need that threat of the run right now. Now, the hope is that Riley can go out there and be better throwing the football. And because you guys, you're down 3 starting offensive linemen. Your left tackle, your center, and your right guard are gone. They're not there. If Charles Jagasaw was healthy and Ashton Craig is healthy and Billy Schroth was healthy, maybe we could have a deeper conversation about that. But you're not turning to a quarterback that is going to be able to run this offense the way that Riley does. But it's also why I do think the one big mistake this offensive staff has made is when you decided that Riley was not healthy enough to run the football against Northern Illinois, that's when you should have considered putting one of your other quarterbacks in to try to give your offense a spark at some point in time in that game. Because if Riley can't run, right now, the way he's throwing the ball, he's not good enough to lead your offense. And I think on Saturday they tried to kind of get the offense going without him running, and it didn't work.
Yeah, they realized that pretty quickly.
That's where you're at. So, but overall, Vince, I think 36 carries for 270 yards. To getting back to the point that we had, is impressive. Notre Dame only had -8 rushing yards on Saturday as well. That's another underrated point of this too. And one of the, I think the -5 from Riley, I believe, was on a sack. So if you actually look at rushing yards, take out the sack. If you actually look at rushing yards, Notre Dame rushed for 275 yards and on 35 carries. You know, that's pretty good, Vince. I'm going to do the math. That's 7.9 yards per attempt. That's a pretty good day. Yeah, it wasn't pretty, but when you can go out there and do that to team, I mean, remember we were talking about before the years, like, you know, how good is this team going to be running the ball with all these new guys and things like that? And, you know, and right now they're like, oh, you know, you can't go out there and run on people and this, that, and the other thing. And I'm looking at this Notre Dame offense and I'm like, this team's averaging 238 rushing yards a game and 6.7 yards per carry. Right now, Notre Dame ranks number 5 in college football in yards per carry at 6.7. And they're number 3 amongst Power 5 teams. Ohio State's 1, UCF is 2, Notre Dame is 3. Boise State and South Alabama are ahead of them. Like, you know what? It's a pretty good day's work. And Notre Dame also ranks, they're tied for 8th in rushing touchdowns in college football this year. One of the teams ahead of them has played in 5 games. So, yeah, they're playing bully ball. It's not pretty all the time, but I thought they beat Miami of Ohio up, just warmed down. And basically, when you've got Riley Leonard in the game and you've got running backs like Notre Dame has, it's pick your poison. Do you want Riley to beat you, or do you want the running backs to beat you? Purdue, Texas A&M said, we're not going to let Riley Leonard beat us. And so Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price beat you. They had a game plan where they were crashing 2 guys off the edge to take away Riley's running ability. So what did that leave open? Jadarian up the middle for big gains. Jeremiah up the middle for big gains. Right? And you look at Purdue. Purdue had sort of a, hey, we're going to play the read zone a certain way, which allowed Notre Dame to rip off some big plays. But also the way that they were trying to defend the run game made them very susceptible to a lot of the counter stuff, which Notre Dame ran with the running backs and the quarterback. So when you have a quarterback that's this mobile, what it does run game wise is it gives you it gives you the threat of, you can't just say we got to stop 4 and 24. It says it's harder to game plan to stop backs that good when you also have a quarterback that you know, if he keeps playing the way he's playing right now, could get close to 1,000 yards rushing this year. I don't want that to happen because I hope he starts throwing the ball better and they don't need him to run as much as they are. But think about that. You know, I mean, think about that, Vince. It makes it hard to defend. It really does. I mean, if you look at the numbers, Jeremiah Love's averaging, Jadarian Price leads the team in yards per carry at 7.42. Jeremiah Love is right behind him at 7.37. And Riley Leonard's right behind those two at 7 yards a carry. Riley Leonard's averaging 7 yards a carry right now, your quarterback. And those 3 guys have combined for 12 rushing touchdowns. Like, it's hard to defend that. And that's why I say, if your pass game was just good, not even great, just good, you don't stop this offense. I mean, they're doing what they're doing right now with a pass game that's just substandard. I mean, we be honest about that. There's a lot of reasons why. And a big reason why is because even though I'll give Joe Rudolph credit for this. There's things that he's doing right now that I don't like. But what you and I said this whole offseason, I don't want to see Joe Rudolph's offensive lines going out there playing passive like they did last year, playing soft.
They're not doing that.
4 games, there's a lot to clean up, but not once have I watched that offensive line say they're not playing hard.
Right.
They may not be playing well all the time, but like Sam Pendleton had the worst game of his career on Saturday, in my opinion. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
Oof, it was
but
bad.
Not at no point in time did I ever say Salmon's not playing hard. He's not focused. He's not locked in. He's playing soft. He doesn't want to be here. He's overlooking Miami of Ohio. Never once did I think that. I said, well, he's got to fix his footwork there. I don't think he understood what was going on there. He's got to clean up his hand play right there. But you know what you get from Sam Pendleton every single snap? Kid is playing hard. You know what you got from Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler on Saturday? There's plays that they missed on. There's mistakes they made. But I never once thought, man, Rocco's got to play harder there. Coogan is not bringing it today. He's not playing hard today. And as bad as Anthony Knapp has been, he has at times looked confused and he's not sure who to block. But outside of a couple of those snaps, the kid's playing hard. And that's why with this group of running backs, Vince, it's not rocket science. Play hard, get a body on a body, and let those flipping dudes do what they do. It's really that simple. Well, this doesn't translate to better defenses. Yeah, it does. We watched it in the opener against Texas A&M. Play hard, get a body on a body, and those three kids are going to make plays.
And that's the best defensive line that they're going to face all season.
I think so. Now
in week
here's
one.
the thing. I think the second best defensive line they're going to play
is this
all
week
season
coming up.
is the one they're going to play next Saturday.
Agreed. I agree. Okay, the final key to victory for the offense, number 4, early down pass game. This is a bit of an extension of key number 2. Miami is going to play a lot of heavy boxes on early downs. They did that in the first 2 games, and neither Northwestern nor Cincinnati run the ball like Notre Dame does. That means the Irish will need to take advantage of that with the pass game and make Miami pay for their loaded boxes. They will need a strong early down pass game plan that looks to get the ball in space, attack down the field, and give wideouts a chance to make big plays.
So I believe, Vince, that they went into this game thinking with the thought that they've got to be able to throw the ball on first down. And I actually think overall the game plan there was good. The execution wasn't there. So overall, I'd probably go with I'm borderline between a check and a minus because let's walk through it. Okay, so first drive you don't throw on first down, you run on first down, and you're 3 and out. Next drive you come out on first down. I'm actually going to walk people through this play tomorrow, but he looks right, and he's looking at Chris Mitchell running an out cut. Chris slips. And as soon as Chris slips, Riley comes backside to Mitchell Evans on a seam route. Perfectly placed ball. Either Mitchell catches it or it's a PI, and he got a PI. So good first down play there. Next play, again, another good first down design. You're running a sprint out play to Chris Mitchell. He's open, nice, easy 5-6 yard gain, just like last week. Quarterback throws the ball over his head. Right. So the plan was there. The execution wasn't there. Right. So that's got to get better. Your next first down play, next drive, you run the ball on first down and you get 3. The next drive, you have 2 first down runs. This is the first touchdown drive, which we'll break down later. You have 2 8-yard runs. Your third first down of that series, you throw a go ball. This was actually a really smart play by Riley. They jump off sides. He knows he's got a free play.
Yes.
Take your shot. And Jordan Faison gets interfered with. Good first down shot. They were dropping back, throwing the ball on that play. You throw a tunnel screen on the next play, incomplete pass. Your next first down, Jeremiah Love runs for 5 or 9. Your next first down, Riley goes for a touchdown. And then your next first down, goes for 5 yards, your design run, your next first down. Riley runs it in for a touchdown. Run on first down, your next drive. First down, you get 8 yards. And then Riley throws the ball to Chris Mitchell, bad ball, just misses them on first down. So again, you're being aggressive there. You just miss. Then on 2nd and 10, he hits Chris Mitchell for a first down. Your next first down play, 38-yard bomb for a touchdown. Right. So, I think early down pass success, Vince, was I give it a check. It's not a plus, set third quarter. Your first down and 10, you throw a little quick, 6-yard gain to Eli Raridan to move the chains, and Riley takes off running the next play. No first down runs on the next drive or passes on the next drive. You're running after that. You weren't running the ball. You weren't throwing the ball that much on first down after that. But I think overall, the plan early was they knew they had to get the ball outside on first down. They had some stuff designed. They hit some things in those situations. So schematically, game plan wise, I give it a check. Actually, I'll give it a plus for the game plan.
Yes, agreed.
Execution wise, at times it was good, at times it wasn't good. So you add it all up, I give him a check. That's where I'm at on this one. It was a good game plan. It was overall solid. It needs to be better, but it was enough. In this particular game, it was enough to get the job done.
Those are our offensive keys revisited, Brian. In the meantime, make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell, share with your family and friends, and of course, jump on the boards at irishbreakdown.com for all of your breakdown needs. They're all there. Boards at irishbreakdown.com. Let's hit the defensive keys to victory for Miami. And the first defensive key, Brian, shut down the run game. There aren't as many keys for the Notre Dame defense, which is more about just what you do. The unit has to simplify how it is focused and playing hard. When it does, the group is outstanding. But there are some things that we need to see from this group, and it starts with shutting down the Miami run game. Miami has struggled mightily with its ground game, rushing for just 64 yards in its first 2 games combined. This is what makes this matchup very different than the Northern Illinois game. But Notre Dame can't just take their run game struggles for granted. They need to keep that going and completely shut down the Miami run game. I doubt the Red Hawks abandon the run game initially, as the coaches likely know they need to have some semblance of balance if they are going to stay in the game.
I got that right. They definitely came out and tried to be balanced.
Yes, they did.
What I mean?
Yes, they did.
So I'm going to break it down further later, Vince. But in this particular instance, I give it a minus.
I do too.
Even though the numbers, I mean, look, 28 carries for 110 yards, 3.9 yards per carry. Okay, that's great. The problem is you had 30 yards lost on sacks. If you look at what the running backs did, the running backs had, I think it was 119 yards on 119 yards on 22 carries is what the running backs did, which I think is about 5.3 yards per carry. For a group of running backs that 3 of the guys were sub 2 yards per carry coming into the game. I don't care the reasons why you were willing to give them some runs, and I'll break that down later. The fact is you didn't execute well enough in the run game, even with the game plan understandably being what it was. For another week in a row, we watched the defensive tackles get pushed off the football. And it's just by a, like I was talking to somebody in the press box and they're like, this guy's a 5th year. And I'm like, they're not good. I know they're veterans. I know they're big. They're just not good. And their inside guys especially were just not good. And I will say that I thought Howard Cross played better than he has so far this season, but not nearly good enough.
Yeah,
and there
he
was
sparked every now and again.
Yeah. Riley Mills was like okay in the game, but I expect a guy like Riley Mills to not just be okay against Miami of Ohio. And Jason Onye didn't play as well this week as he did last week. He wasn't bad. And then there were some other issues where you did have a couple young guys in the game that would stunt around and not finish off the stunt, which allowed them to get bounce it and hit the hole. So there were some youthful mistakes in the game as well. But overall, I give them a minus. You allowed a team that ran for 64 yards in their first 2 games to rush for 110 yards. It's not good enough.
Yeah.
It's not good enough.
No, completely. I'm with you on that one. It's not just about the numbers. I want to be very clear on that. It's about the expectations for this defense in this game, right? I mean, you look at it from a bird's eye view. You're like, okay, you held them to 3 point whatever yards of rush. You did all this, you did all that. Okay, cool. That's great for a lot of defenses. But is that what we're doing? Are we setting the bar here or are we setting the bar here? I think the bar needs to be here. And that's why it's a minus. And I know I'm not even in the chat right now, but my guess is people are like, what are you talking about? No. I mean,
don't assume that the chat's doing things. Just stay on focus and stuff like that. Yeah. There's plenty of reasons to legitimately be upset about that part of our show. We don't need to make up things, right? That's what we say about the team, right? There's plenty of reasons to be upset about. I had somebody, I'm trying to think of what it was, but I had somebody said something about Riley Leonard, and I'm like, okay, there's plenty of things you'd be critical for. You're literally just making that up. Like, it's just like that didn't happen. You know what I mean? It's like you don't need to make stuff up to be critical of Riley Leonard. There's things there that you can go after. You know what I mean? As long as you're willing to also look at the things that he did do. So,
sure.
Yeah. But no, I mean, there were some people on the board that said that, but and to a degree, Vince, I kind of understand what they're saying. Like, look, if you just look at the stats, 110 yards on 28 carries is not a great game. But by allowing them to kind of lean on you at times, you allowed them to put a couple drives together that milked some clock.
Sure.
And gave your offense less chances to kind of, get the ball back. And so that was sort of my thing is they put back-to-back 4-down drives together in that game. One was 8 play. They only went 27 yards, but they ran 8 plays. It took almost 5 minutes off the clock in the first half, Vince. And then they had another drive in the first quarter that ended up in the second quarter, but they went 10 plays, 59 yards, and took 4 minutes off the clock. That's almost 9 minutes of game time in the first half on 2 drives because you were making mistakes in the run game and letting them get the ball in the kind of going a little bit in the run game. And so those are the things I look at and say, hey, those things have to get better and should be better. But they weren't bad; they just weren't dominant. And that's why they needed to dominate the run game.
Right.
They didn't dominate the run game.
No.
Did they play bad against the run? No, they didn't. They were solid against the run. 110 yards on but again, your 4 running backs combined for 119 yards on 22 carries, average over 5 yards carry. Guys, that's not good. It's not bad, but it's not good.
It's not good. Yeah. Agreed. Point number 2 for the defense. Don't let Brett Gabbert get comfortable. Miami quarterback Brett Gabbert is a smart veteran quarterback with loads of experience. He's passed for 8,459 yards and 61 touchdowns in his career. If he gets comfortable early in the game, he can be dangerous, and he has some weapons to throw to. While he possesses loads of experience and is a smart quarterback, he's also undersized at 6 foot. He doesn't have a big arm. If the defense can put pressure on him with some consistency, he'll have a tough time making plays. I would say that this is check to a check plus, frankly.
I'd give it a plus. Here's the deal.
Okay, good.
As frustrated as I was by that part of the game, this part was dominant.
Yes.
I mean, this part was dominant. And here's the numbers. Brett Gabbert, who we mentioned, has over 6,000 career yards, over 60 career touchdowns. I'm sorry, over 8,000 career yards and over 60 career touchdowns. Went 14 of 35 for 119 yards. Got sacked 4 times. Had to scramble other times, which at the end of the day, they didn't do a good job on containing those. But if Brett Gabbert's scrambling and not throwing the ball to Cole McDonald or Reggie Virgil, that's a win.
Mm-hmm.
And what was his completion percentage? Was
40%.
So I'll give you guys some context of this performance for Brett Gabbert. Okay. So the last time that Brett Gabbert had a completion percentage that low was back when he was a true freshman in 2019 against Ohio State. That is the same year that it was also the last time he threw for this low of yards. Guys, Ian Book still had a full season of eligibility left after the season in which the last time Brett Gabbert had a completion percentage as low as he had on Saturday or threw as for few yards as he did on Saturday in a game where he actually started and played the whole game. That's dominance. And again, he does have weapons. And I talked about Cole McDonald. Cole McDonald he beat Xavier Watts early in the game to set up that first potential touchdown drive after the muff punt. Does a nice job beating him. They held him to 4 catches for 52 yards. He had a really long gain early. Reggie Virgil had 1 catch for 12 yards. So the 2 really good receivers that we were concerned about. And we talked about how good Cole McDonald was coming into the game. He's a guy that had 8 catches in each of the first 2 games, Vince, and had over 1,000 or had over 100 yards in each game. Mm-hmm. That kid came into the game with in just 2 games with 16 catches and 240 yards, and Notre Dame held him to 4 catches for 52 yards, and he didn't get into the end zone. And he also was one of the best punt returners in the country last year, and he got 1 return for 10 yards. That's it. So you neutralized him in this game. One of the few kids that had a chance to beat you. He was one of the guys I talked about as a potential game wrecker. They shut him down, and part of the reason they shut him down, there was good coverage, but the other part of the reason they shut him down is they never let Brett Gabbert get comfortable. He could not get comfortable that entire game. And there weren't like a whole lot of balls where like, boy, if he makes that throw, that might have been – there's a couple, but he couldn't often get it because they were on him all game long. So this is a plus for me. Because again, when you have a 6th-year senior quarterback with 8,000 plus career yards, and he goes 14 of 35 for 119 yards and 2 picks, you had yourself a day. You absolutely had yourself a day. And some of the stuff is, Brett made some nice throws, but like the read to Christian Gray, or the first pass breakup that Christian Gray had. I mean, dude, that was the proper read. Teams aren't supposed to be able to drive on that route in that situation, but most teams don't have guys like Benjamin Morrison and Christian Gray. And so he drives on that route. And so it was a really good game plan. And here's something else, Vince. Did you notice something from the Notre Dame defense that we haven't seen, that I don't remember ever seeing from them until this game? Cover 2. We saw a lot of cover 2 in this game. And so there was a play where I thought, I'm like, man, Benjamin's like, he's got beat by that guy. And if it's not for a Don Schuler like coming over and breaking up that pass, Benjamin might have got beat. And then I looked, because cover 2 is not even in my thought process with this Notre Dame defense.
Yeah, because they don't run it.
And then I saw the film, because we watch it live, and then I look at the TV, and then they run the TV play, and you're like, dude, they were playing cover 2. And so Benjamin actually rode the guy outside, and he's playing trail position. And you play trail position because you got help over top, and then you're there to break. If they run any out-breaking routes, you're there to kind of take those. So he actually played it well. But in my head, as I'm watching it live, because I wasn't looking at that side of the field at first. I was looking at the other side and looking at the line and backers. I'm like, man, I think Benjamin might have got beat a little bit on that play. And lo and behold, they're playing cover 2. And there were just some things they did coverage-wise that I thought confused Brett Gabbert. And he wasn't quite sure where to go with the football. And so I thought in that regard, Vince, I thought they absolutely shut him down. Absolutely shut him down. So big time plus on this one.
Yeah. This is a scary secondary for anybody to go up against. And, you can go across the board, right? Because Christian Gray is now becoming a very obvious weapon for Notre Dame, and
he's
a guy that
he's already arrived. He's a star.
Like, he should
have 5 interceptions right now.
Yeah, exactly. He should be leading the nation in interceptions. There's no doubt about it. But going into the season, as you're looking at Notre Dame's defense, right? You circled Benjamin Morrison, you circled Xavier Watts. You're like, okay, we'll kind of attack this other side of the field or these other guys. And all of a sudden now, okay, well, Christian Gray just makes plays. That's just what he does. And so now, okay, we got to circle him now. And then there's a Don Schuler who he might be out of position every now and again, but he comes down like a heat-seeking missile and covers pretty well too. So it's like, okay, where's the weak spot in this secondary? I'm not sure there is one right now. So teams are going to struggle against this secondary, against this defense, which then, and I want to go down a rabbit hole, but then allows the offense to do what the offense does and incrementally get better. And we can go down that road later, but the defense is what it is. And
they're going to have to be on top of their game on Saturday, but so far, this season, I mean, this is the second time they've only played 4 games. And in half the games they've played so far, they've held their opponent to 3.3 yards per pass attempt. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. And that's from an SEC team and a team that won 11 games last year.
That's
they're not that team right now, but still, boy, that is really impressive.
That's 10 feet. You know what I mean? Like, that's what they're allowing. They're allowing 10 feet. So pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. Final point for the defense, then the keys to victory was limit big plays. The fear is that if Gabbert gets into rhythm and gets clean pockets, he'll be able to get the ball to his talented pass catchers. Miami has 3 receivers capable of ripping off big plays, and this is especially true of slot receiver Cade McDonald. The 5'11", 200-pound wideout is one of the nation's best punt returners. He's a weapon after the catch, and he has the speed to beat teams down the field. McDonald caught 8 passes for 105 yards against Northwestern, and again, 8 passes for 135 yards in the loss to Cincinnati. He's a pain, and Notre Dame can't let him take over this matchup against Jordan Clark.
I mean, Vince, I call this a huge check. I mean, this is a plus for me, actually. You look at Cincinnati. Cincinnati's 3-1 right now. They beat they lost to Pitt in a game. They blew a 24-3 lead. Then they beat Miami of Ohio by 11, and then this past weekend they beat Houston 34-0. And in that game against where Miami played Cincinnati won by 11. So again, this is a Power 5 team that is now 3-1. With 2 wins over other Power 5 teams, a win over Power 5 team and a 1-point loss to a Power 5 team. Miami had catches of 50. They had a 58-yard touchdown reception, a 51-yard reception by another player, a 37-yard reception by another player, and a 35-yard reception by another player. Their longest, they had 2 plays on Saturday of over 20 yards. That's it. Cade McDonald had a 21-yard gain, and they had a 20-yard run. That's it. So, we said the only chance Miami has is to rip off some big plays in this game. And and here's the thing. The longest play he had was on their second. It's kind of at the extension of their first drive. It was after the muffed punt. The second down play, he beat Xavier Watts on a 21-yard gain. You go from 1st and 10 on your 26 to 1st and goal at the 5. Next play, you break it up, get a pick. Down in the red zone, the next time they were down in the red zone, it's still nothing game. They get 1st and goal at the 7-yard line, and they throw 2 fade routes, I believe. Let me find it here. They throw 2 fade routes in the red zone to Reggie Virgil against Benjamin Morrison, and Morrison locked them down both times. 1st down and 3rd down, they threw fade balls to their 6'4" receiver that I just talked about in that thing, and he locked them down both times. Benjamin locked them down both times. And so huge check, plus for me. Those 2 kids combined for 5 catches and 64 yards in this game. That's half of what Cade McDonald had against Cincinnati by himself. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's a huge plus in my opinion. Huge plus. So yeah, they didn't play well in the run game, and I'll talk more about that in this next segment. But when it comes to do what you do best, Notre Dame absolutely did what they did best in this game. Because I said before the game, these receivers are not bums, man. These are good football players. Cade McDonald's a good football player, and Notre Dame shut him down. I'll take that. So yeah, it's a plus. Definitely a plus. So not even a check, Vince. I think it's a plus.
Oh yeah, completely agree.
2 plays of over 20, a 20 and a 21-yard gain for against a team who the week before against another Power 5 team had 4 plays of 35 yards or more, including 2 of over 50 in the pass game. And you gave up 1 play. Matter of fact, their longest gain outside of that, I think, was 13 yards in the pass game. It's pretty good. Good.
Agreed. Those are our defensive keys revisited for the Miami, Ohio game. Please make sure you hit that like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell, share with your family and friends, and of course, jump on the boards.irishbreakdown.com, because there will be some pretty good breakdowns this week. As Bryan had mentioned before, every throw of Riley Leonard will be on there at some point tomorrow, probably later in the day, but they will all be there, and that's going to be for board members only. Just being honest, right? That's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, man. Yeah, it's not something that just happens, right? It's not like poof, there it is. So, but again, that's only for board members. So you got to be on the boards.irishbreakdown.com if you want to get that kind of analysis that you can only get here at Irish Breakdown. That's a fact. Let's jump into the next segment, Bryan, and we're going to focus on the offense, and we are going to basically talk about what we saw on film. Did it back up what we thought coming out of the game? Is it, something that we may have missed or didn't see? And so now we've got a kind of a difference of opinion. And then, of course, key moments in the game offensively and why those are such, right? So I will let you kick this thing off with your thoughts on the offense and what you saw on film. And we can kind of intermingle, the key moments. That's fine, but that's kind of what this segment is all about.
Yeah. One thing I saw on film, Vince, is if you're going to grade the pass game for how it performed in this game, it was not good enough, right?
Absolutely.
But what I felt after breaking down the film is I actually felt better about the pass game, because you realize it's a lot closer than I thought it was. And you look at some of the throws that were made, you look at some of the reads that were made, like watching it live, I couldn't tell. Like, it looked like Riley came back late to Mitchell Evans, right? But if you break the play down, you see he's looking to read right. Chris Mitchell's his read, and he's about to throw. Chris slips, and he comes immediately back to Mitchell, finds him, and lets loose. That was not a ball he was throwing in the first 3 games. Just was not a ball he was throwing.
That's true.
And so he wasn't late. He was, I know where I'm going to go to the ball. Oops, that guy fell. I got to do something different. There was another play in the 3rd quarter where Riley is reading right. It's covered. He immediately comes backside and reads the curl flat, hits Chris Mitchell on a curl route. Not a read he was making the first 2 games. He would see if that wasn't there, he was taking off running. And so there were some improvements. So I felt a little better about the pass game after watching film, while still coming to the conclusion that it's still not good enough, clearly, but it's at least, okay, it's showing some promise. You look at some of the deep balls, and it confirms some of the things I saw. So just overall, while still frustrated with the pass game, I'm not as frustrated by the pass game as I was. Still frustrated, but
Sure.
you're like, you know, it's closer than I thought it was. That was my first takeaway from the pass game. And you look at how Riley finished, Vince, 11 of 15, 132 yards and a touchdown. You're like, okay, if he can finally take something and build on it, that's something to build on. So after the miss, the 2 quick, I'm trying to think, what was I'd have to go back and look at it, but I wrote it down. But after there was a miss that he had, and I charted after that drive, and after that drive, he went 11 and 15 for 132 yards. It included the whole second half and part of the second quarter. And you're like, okay, can this? And then you look at it. There was quick reads. He's getting the ball out. There were just some things you're like, okay, can he do this consistently while still taking some of those shots? So 11 and 15 for 32 yards, 132 yards, and also had a PI that was called to give him 15 yards, and another go ball that was dropped by Bo Collins. So you're like, okay, it's getting closer, but it's still not good enough. So I mean, that was my first real big takeaway. And part of it, I guess my number 2 is part of that is because there's still too many sloppy mistakes on offense. So those 2 things kind of still go together, because you started to see a lot of that in the pass game.
I would say from a Riley Leonard pass game scenario, I agree with you completely. I liked the first TD drive a lot better watching it on film, even more so than I did watching it live. And the reason being, and I think a lot of us are going to fall into this category as you're watching the game, right? We all knew what we wanted to see in this game from Riley Leonard, or from the passing game, as a whole. And the first couple of drives, it was like, oh dear Lord, what is happening? Like, why does this keep happening? Now he can't hit the short throw. Like it built up to where all of a sudden now it's like, nope, he can't do it. He cannot make these throws. And if you are somebody who is anti-Riley Leonard or doesn't think he can get the job done, all you needed to watch was those first couple of drives, and you're like, yep, he's terrible. They got to bench him. It's over. It's over. And you're not watching anymore.
Well,
right?
and it kind of was the first couple drives.
I completely agree.
Outside of one, the pass interference to Mitchell Evans, you're like, when your best play is you drew a pass interference, you're not playing well.
Completely agree. And
that was the story in the first quarter from Riley. Yeah, absolutely true.
I was super frustrated. And I think that's also why, because I watch games emotionally. There's no doubt about it. I'm a fan. Like, I watch games emotionally too. And so I watched those first few drives. And I was like, crap, he is not living up to what he needs to be doing in this game. And
here we go again. You're like, dude, he's regressed because he hit these these are throws he was hitting last week, and now he's not even hitting those throws now.
Right.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
Yes. And then, you watch that touchdown drive and you're like, okay, well, they finally put something together. When I watched it back, it was like, okay, making reads, stepping into the throws. Like, okay, this is what he was supposed to. If he would have done that on the first drive, I would have had different.
This is the thing. It'd have been a 40. And this is what's so frustrating about it. If he hits those 2 easy throws in the first drive, I think they go down and score, and it's 7-0, and they roll.
100%.
They roll. It's probably 42-0. And you look at that first touchdown drive. Hits a nice little quick option route to Jaden Thomas to convert a 2nd and 2. Then he hits Mitchell Evans for a little 6-yard gain to convert a first down. Throws the deep ball next to Jordan Faison that gets a pass interference penalty. The tunnel screen gets blown up. They get a little break from, and this is kind of this key moment. Vince, so you said you want to incorporate key moments. Well, this brings up a key moment. This was, to me, this was we didn't see this sequence of events against Northern Illinois. Mm-hmm. We didn't see it. So you get a little bit of a break from the pass, from the face mask. And then on 2nd and 1, he hits just a nice little middle option route to move the chains. He runs for 5 yards. He throws a slant route to Jaden Thomas, which again was frustrating because The ball needed to be behind Jaden because the way that they were defending that, he can't lead Jaden on that. But you don't throw it low and away. You throw it on his back shoulder so Jaden can catch it, and then Jaden can run out to the corner for a touchdown.
Because
right?
He was already kind of making that cut back to adjust to the ball, obviously.
Jaden played that ball perfectly.
Yes.
Because if Jaden's not anticipating the ball being behind him, because Jaden read the defense perfectly. They're flying out on this RPO. He's going to put that right on my back shoulder. And if Riley throws that accurately, I think Jaden catches it and spins out and goes.
I think he's got like one man to beat, and I would,
it's him versus the corner to the pylon.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So like I'm cool with that.
So yeah, the read was there, but the ball's got to be better. And then of course on the next play he runs and scores. Now I will say this: my criticism is theirs. He should have handed that ball off to Jadarian Price. But if he does, Jadarian probably scores also. Somebody was scoring on that play. Notre Dame.
It's just it worked out that the force player came so far upfield. It was a good move by Riley to kind of put his outside leg in the ground and cut back inside. But that force player came so far up that he just, made him
the fact he had to make that guy miss is why he should have handed the ball.
That's what I'm saying, because he was covered.
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
But he made that guy miss. But here's the thing. This is the coaching point. You guys want to know how coaches critique players. You don't say, "Oh, Riley, way to make a play." You say, "Hey, great job making a play, Riley," but it doesn't end there. But look, here's the deal. That's your read key. He does this. You gotta hand his ball off because it worked there. But I don't know if you're going to be able to make the Georgia kids miss like that, or I don't know if you're going to make Ashton Gillott miss like that next week. You know what I mean? So you praise him for making a play, but then you critique the read and make sure he understands 24 needs to get the ball right there.
Yeah.
And then you come out the next series, Vince, and he throws a 2nd and 2 to Mitchell Evans. I thought Riley was expecting Mitchell to run a sticks route there, and Mitchell kept pushing vertically for a hitch. Riley was throwing to the sticks, and you could see he was frustrated by it. Then on 3rd and 2, Riley takes off for a 21-yard gain. 2 plays later, this was one of my key moments. This play right here changed the game. It wasn't the 38-yard touchdown to Bo. It was the 2nd and 10 throw to Chris Mitchell, because Riley needs to drive that. That guy's all over Chris Mitchell. Riley drives it. He actually snaps the ball off, comes backside to Chris, was running a backside dig cut, and he drives it down, and then Chris Mitchell did a great job going down and making that catch. So if he doesn't throw a good ball there, and if Chris doesn't make a good catch there, because it was both, right? Good ball, good catch. You're at 3rd and 10, and they're not giving you the go ball to Bo Collins on the next play. It's now 3rd and 10 at your own 48-yard line. Right? You'd be 3rd and 10 at your own 48. Now, because you threw that really nice ball and Chris made a great catch, it's now 1st and 10 at the 38. Now they're in their first down defense. What did we say? There's going to be chances to make some big plays on their first down defense. You drop back, go ball. Riley reads it. He goes there the whole time. He sees the single high safety. He knows it's Bo versus that dude. Bo beats the guy. Riley throws a perfect ball. Bo did a nice job accelerating too through the look back. If Bo slows down at all, that ball's too far. Bo did a really nice job of accelerating through the look back, making that catch and scoring a touchdown. So that was a huge play, Vince, but it was the play before that converted the 2nd and 10 to me that made that happen. And that was part of, after that sequence of events, the only bad ball that I thought Riley had was that under route to the left that he just threw it way behind Mitchell Evans. Other than that, if you go actually look at Riley in the second half, he was pretty sharp in the second half. And you hope that was something that sparked him, was that sequence of events, those 2 series. You hope.
Yeah, you definitely hope, for sure. Any other key moments for you? I believe we have one more key moment that we want to bring up in this.
Well,
and that would be
there was another takeaway. Well, there was another takeaway that I had after watching film, and that is the left side of the offensive line was actually a little worse than I thought it was.
Yeah,
I didn't think it was very good watching it live.
Right.
Anthony Knapp has really struggled in pass pro all year, and I actually think he's getting worse, because I think teams have recognized that he's a liability there, and they're going after him with very physical, hard charges, and he's really struggling. Like, he's a really good run blocker, but he's really struggling to pass pro. And I thought Sam Pendleton also. They're starting to. This is what Miami did a really good job of. They were running line games on those two young guys,
and they didn't
know how to
handle it.
Didn't know how to handle it.
Oh, yeah. I brought this up to you before we started the show, Brian. There was a throw early on in the game, and it was a quick game. It was just a step and throw kind of a situation to Riley's left. It ended up getting completed, okay? But the problem was that as soon as Riley caught the ball and he steps over to the left to throw it, the left guard, Sam Pendleton, is already in his face, and the rusher that was rushing against Anthony Knapp had already taken an inside move and was bearing down on Riley Leonard. And so that's why he couldn't even really step into the throw, because as soon as he threw it, he kind of took a step back as well, because there was pressure right in his face. And we're talking quick game here, not like a 3-step drop. It's catch and it's throw. And it was, like I said, it was complete, but he's getting all kinds of pressure from the left side. And therefore, later on in the game, as I'm watching Riley Leonard throw the football, and you mentioned this to me, and I saw it as well, he kind of drifts right an awful lot when he's in the pocket. And so he's drifting right. And
no, keep going. This is why I mute myself, Vince. So I don't interrupt.
Okay, gotcha.
You. Go ahead.
No, you're good. So he's drifting right. And then even when he takes a throw to the left, he's almost like short stepping or even short arming at times, because he'll throw it and then kind of step back a little bit as well. And that can affect your accuracy, and it can also affect the velocity that you put on the football. And so it is clear, whether it is imagined or not, and most of the time it's not, pressure from the left side is affecting the pass game. And it's not good. They got to figure something out in the pass game on the left side.
I had a bad offensive line in college as well. And it gets in your head. And you start kind of doing things to prepare. So like I would start kind of in shotgun drops, instead of like turning, I would kind of start backpedaling almost, because I had to be able to go either direction. And it gets you some bad habits. And you don't even think about it. It's kind of, I didn't sit there in my dorm room like, okay, listen, now if they do this, actually I didn't have a dorm. I lived in a townhouse for college students, but that's a different conversation. But it's not like okay, listen, this is what I'm going to do. But it was just more of a reaction to it.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can, again, that's not why Riley's missing certain throws, right?
No, I'm not making that excuse for him
out throws because, but I do think it's part of the reason he is rushing his reads a little bit. I do think it's part of the reason he's rushing his reads. I think it's part of the reason he's not always comfortable to step into throws. It's part of the reason he only attempted 2 passes to the left side against Purdue. 2. That's it. And one of them was behind the line of scrimmage. It was you know what I mean, Vince? It was like, that's
right.
Not good. So you look at it and say, he threw 2 outside to the left. He threw another third one that was on a short screen to oh gosh, man, I'm drawing a blank. Eli Raridan.
Raridan.
Eli Raridan. Yeah. So I'm talking about against Purdue.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah. And you didn't see him throw to the left a ton in this game. He's not comfortable throwing to the left, because I think he was okay throwing to the left in the first game, but he's gotten some hits since then.
Yeah.
And I do think it's in his head a little bit. Sure. And one of 2 things are going to have to happen. They're either going to have to figure out a way to get Anthony Knapp better, give him some help in certain situations, or and they're doing some things. They're rolling him out at times. They're doing some things to protect him, but they're going to have to find some answers there, because you can tell that one of the several problems that Riley Leonard's having right now is he doesn't have a lot of faith in the left side of the offensive line, and honestly shouldn't. Because if this is happening in games against these teams, it's happening to him in practice when he's going against the Notre Dame defense. So, they're gonna have to get better.
Yes, no question about it. And I don't know if I hope they can get better with the guys that they have on the field, but if not, they need to be willing to look elsewhere.
Well, here's the thing, Vince. I mean, if we're having a real conversation about it, like I'm not super high on Tosh Baker, but I've seen Tosh Baker start a game where he played better than what we've seen from Anthony Knapp so far. And it was the bowl game against Oregon State. And again, I know Anthony brings you a lot of value as a run blocker. And this is the rub. Tosh is not the run blocker that Anthony Knapp is. But so you say, okay, if you're going to lose a little bit in the run game, but you're going to gain some in the pass game. Is that enough to counter that to where Riley's going to make enough of a jump in the throwing game? I don't know that fixing the left tackle problem fixes all of Riley Leonard's problems either. You know what I mean?
That's
so
fair.
at least
No, that's
you can
fair.
say, hey, look, I know that Anthony's struggling, but at least he's giving, because Anthony still is pretty good in the run game.
Sure.
That's the rub.
And it's not just a left tackle problem either. It's also a bit of a left guard problem.
Yeah, and that one's a little bit different because I do think Sam prior to this game was better in the run in the pass game than he was in this game. But I think teams are going to look at this Miami film and say, line games against the left side of the line, let's do that because it worked. And it's worked now a couple times. So like Sam is so good in the run game. That's the rub there. It's like Anthony's good in the run game. Sam's really good in the run game. You know what I mean, Vince? And it's like, I don't know that I want to take that out, but so then you say, okay, so what do you do? Do you move Gerby Lambert over there and try to get him ready for the next couple of weeks so he can be ready against Stanford? Do you put Sullivan Absher back out there? They had Sullivan Absher at left guard in this game. He's been moving, he's right guard, we're left guard, left tackle. They're moving that kid all around. You can't tell me that Sullivan Absher would be worse than what we've seen at left tackle the first 4 games. You just can't convince me of that. He's going to need you can't convince me that Tosh Baker, if healthy, is better there. And he may not be healthy. You definitely can't tell me that if you moved Gerby Lambert to the left side right now and said, hey, fast track this one, get him going, that he's going to be worse than what we've seen the first 4 games from Anthony Knapp in the pass game. And he's 6'7", 320. We've seen him block okay there in the run game. So now the other answer is, okay, have Anthony Knapp get better. Like I'm not ready to move on from the quarterback. I'm not ready to move on necessarily from Anthony Knapp, but it's at least with Riley Leonard, he's bringing value to you in other areas that really make this offense what it is when it's good. And I don't know, and I don't think that who you have behind him does that right now. I don't think that's true at left tackle between Gerby Lambert and Sullivan Absher and Tosh Baker and guys like that. I do think there's some talent that maybe you could say, hey, look, you got to figure something out. Maybe the bye week's a better time for that. Maybe doing that for Louisville's not the answer. I don't know the answer to that, but my hope is that Anthony just plays better. That's my hope. Because like I said, but he's really rough in the pass game, Vince. Really rough. And you can see that it's in Riley's head a little bit in that regard.
Agreed. One of your final, or one of our final key moments in this game, we've got one more, I do believe, that we want to talk about, and that is the Riley Leonard fumble.
Yes.
Right? This was after they scored 2 touchdowns, right? 2 touchdown drives.
2 in a row.
Right. So I'm saying,
drives were touchdowns.
Yes. Yep. Two touchdown drives. After the 3 bad drives, they had 2 touchdown drives. They're driving again. They are inside the red zone of Miami on this play because of a big run by Riley Leonard. Ball pops out. They turn the ball over. Huge momentum swing at that point. Because, look, let's be honest. Notre Dame was going down to put the nail in the coffin on this thing. With the way the defense was playing, if they go up 21-3 at that moment, in that moment of the game's over for all intents and purposes, right? But then they cough it up in that moment and give the ball right back to Miami.
That's the thing, Vince, that you do have to point to if you're going to talk about how dynamic Riley Leonard is in certain parts of the game. And you have to be willing to say, but it's plays like this that are just keeping this offense from getting to where it needs to get to. And yes, the guy made a great play, but you're a runner, man. You've got over 1,000 yards in your career. You're creeping up on you've got 1,500 yards, about 1,500 yards rushing now in your career. When you're downfield, there's guys chasing you from behind. You're stiff arming. You got to get that ball protected. You just do. And it's plays like that. And then they couldn't recover the fight. 2 guys had a shot to recover it. It bounced out of their hands. Somebody said that they wanted it more. I watched Jaden Greathouse hustle his butt off to get that. He just didn't grab it. He's got to do a better job of grabbing it. But he was hustling because he was blocking his butt off down the field on the play too. It wasn't for lack of effort. Just didn't get it done. Like that play to me completely changed the course of that game and kept it from being a game where you're like, okay, yeah. Because here's the thing. If he doesn't fumble that ball there, they go down and score. I mean, it was starting to look easy for this offense
Yes,
at that
completely
point.
agree. Yes.
And if he doesn't fumble there, like you said, it's 21-3 and it's ball game. And I think they then poured on. I do.
Agree. Yeah.
And because I think they scored on their, did they have a punt the next possession?
I've got it right here. So yes, they had a punt. They went a six plays, only 19 yards, ended up punting the ball. In the third quarter. Yep. So
then you have another drive. So you've got a touchdown drive there at 4 minutes
punt
left, and all of a sudden now it's 28-3 instead of then your next touchdown drive. It's now all of a sudden it's 35-3. You know what I mean? Like there's these plays there where you're just like, I think Miami kind of, all right, we gave it a shot. You know what I mean? And so I felt like that play right there, we'd be having a different conversation about this game because you could better look at Riley and say, but if you look at where he was here, and here, boy, this offense started getting rolling. Maybe this is the thing that sparks them. But a play like that is just kind of like it's just another example of a missed opportunity from this offense, and the quarterback made it. So even though we've talked about, hey, you did some things really well, you have to also be willing to point to those mistakes because the problem with Riley's mistakes are, hey, quarterbacks miss sometimes. I've watched great quarterbacks miss easy throws.
Sure.
But the mistakes he's making now are in situations where it's keeping points off the board.
Right.
And that's, so like you make the first miss to Chris Mitchell. It happens. You can't compound that with another miss on the very next play to an open tight end. You know what I mean? It's like, it's that kind of stuff that he's going to have to clean up. And it's clearly in his head right now, Vince. I mean, that's the thing is Riley's got to get out of his own head right now and just go play ball. And those type of mistakes can't happen. But I think we're talking about a 42-3 at least game if Riley doesn't fumble that ball.
Because it starts piling up at that point.
Because how much time was left on the clock when he fumbled that ball? There was 13 minutes left. I mean, they were 3 plays into the half, 4 plays into the half. Let's say they scored another minute and a half. You're now talking, it's an 11-minute mark of the third quarter, and it's 21-3. Notre Dame scored on 3 straight possessions.
Correct.
There's a confidence boost that they bury them at that point in time.
Yep.
And those are the things you can't have those mistakes. You got to clean that stuff up.
Agreed. Absolutely agree. Anything else you want to add to the offensive side of the ball from what you learned by watching film?
I mean, not from watching film, but you look at the same thing about the Jeremiah Love fumble. Now, fortunately, in that instance, Emil Wagner recovered it.
On it. Yeah.
And they didn't review it.
Because
I think they didn't review it because Notre Dame recovered it. But
correct. I completely agree.
It still would have been a touchdown anyway. But like that's the little stuff that's happening on this offense. It's Jeremiah Love doing it. It's Riley Leonard doing it. It's, Bo Collins not making that one play. It's Chris Mitchell needing to be better here with his route. It's Jordan Faison drifting. It's Sam Pendleton and Anthony Knapp not picking up a twist. It's just there's way too many. You're a guy here, you're a guy there. And it's just way too much of that kind of stuff where like Jeremiah Love's killing it this year, man. It's like, buddy, but you can't, those kind of mistakes don't hurt you against Miami of Ohio. They can get you beat in other games. And those are things, and it's not just Jeremiah, it's Riley, it's everybody. You've got to play cleaner football. And I'm not talking about mistakes like where you're so afraid to make a mistake that I'm just saying like that's the silly stuff. That's the kind of stuff that drives a coach nuts. Not the, hey, I tried to take a chance on this play and I threw a pick. Like I could live with Riley turning the ball over. He's got 1 pick this year so far, right? I could live with him having 3 or 4 picks right now if he had, twice as many touchdowns because he's taking more chances throwing the football. I don't know if I can live with 4 picks, but I could live with 3 right now. He takes that shot to Bo Collins on 3rd and 20. Gets picked off. All right, you took your shot. Because you know what? Like maybe it turns into maybe Bo goes up and makes a – because like I can't make a play against this guy for a big play if you don't throw me the ball. And that's what I would like to see. That's what I'd like to see.
Agreed. That's going to do it for our offensive review. Upon further review of the film and our key moments, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button. the notification bell, share with your family and friends, and of course, jump on the boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com for all your breakdown needs. You're only going to find it here at Irish Breakdown. That's for sure. Final part of today's show.
People in the chat are pointing out too, Vince. Riley has 2 interceptions. I always forget about the early one against NIU, the one that got tipped up. I remember the late one, but I always forget about that early one. So
it got tipped up. Yeah, that's true. Not necessarily his fault, but still.
Well, it was his fault because you threw late.
Yeah, right. But the way it all went down.
But if you throw the ball on time, it's not picked.
Fair enough.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Final part of our show today, Brian, is our defensive look at the film, and upon further review, I guess the best way to put it. And then, of course, our key moments in the game. And we've got a few here, obviously, to talk about. Let's kick this thing off, Brian. Talk about the run defense a little bit more specifically than we did earlier on in the show. So, your thoughts on the run defense and kind of what you saw when you look back at the film.
So my grade doesn't change, and my opinion of the run defense didn't change in this game. It wasn't good enough. I didn't think it was good enough. The D tackles weren't good enough. The linebacker play is ascending, but it's still not there yet. But there was also, Vince, a lot of, I think Notre Dame was okay with some of that. And I kind of get it, because their thought process is exactly what we laid out. They're not good enough to beat you running the football. They are good enough to beat you getting, 15 going and getting that big outside guy going, and Brett Gabbert gets hot.
Yeah.
So okay, we're going to kind of give you some of those soft bubbles and say, we dare you to run the ball, because you may get 5-6 yards here, but you know what you're not going to do? You're not going to rip off a 50-yard touchdown run.
Right.
Or like your receivers are capable of doing and have shown that they can do against Power 5 teams. And so to a degree, some of that was given. Now, there were mistakes within that you clean. Like there was a play they ran an outside zone and just sealed off the inside. They got cracked and nobody filled the crack, and they ran outside for an easy 20-yard outside zone play. Like that can't happen. Like you got to fit better there, linebacker. You got to fit better there, defensive end. And so there are some mistakes like that need to get cleaned up. But as you watch it, Vince, I think they were kind of like, look, we're kind of okay with that, because the flip side is what other teams did. Other teams were like, hey, we're going to shut down the run game, and then they went out and got passed on a whole lot. Personally, I think you're good enough in the secondary that you could have still done both. But, I mean, if you're going to play cover 2, you're willing to kind of give up a little bit in the run game because your safeties aren't triggering like they are in other games, right? That's the reality of it. So when you break the game plan down, I think that Notre Dame I think they're okay. They were okay with some, like the 4, 5, 6, 7 yarders. I think they were okay with some of that. The 20-yarder, that was a mistake. There was a play where, and I'll get into the motion, but they ran a motion, and the way that Notre Dame ran the motion, you knew the cutback was going to open up, and just some different things like that I looked at and said, hey, look, I think they were kind of okay with it. They were okay with some of it. I think they were okay giving up 90 to 100 yards, and they weren't concerned about holding them to 30 like they'd had in the first 2 games. So not saying I agree or disagree. I'm just saying, like, that's the reality of what I think the game plan was. And at the end of the day, Vince, it worked because, yeah, you gave up more rushing yards than they average, but you also held them to way fewer passing yards than they average, because your game plan was, we're not going to let them throw the football on us.
You take away what they're best at.
Right. We know that that's the only chance they have of beating us. And so when you look at, for example, the Notre Dame run game, they came in averaging, 32 yards a game, and you gave up 110. So you gave up, 78 yards, right? Am I doing that right? Am I doing the math right? 110 minus 32, 78. Yeah. So you gave up 78 more yards than they came in averaging. But if you look at the pass game, they came in averaging 291.5, and you held them to 119. So you gave up 70 extra rushing yards to counter that with giving up, 172 less passing yards, because you took away a lot of that deep ball stuff by playing some cover 2 and doing some different things there. So I just think, game plan wise, I still didn't like how the run defense played. I still don't like how the D tackles played. Doesn't change any of that. There's still some fits that needed to be better, but you're like, okay, I think they were okay giving up some of that. Does that make sense, Vince? Like, I'm not saying they were okay giving up that 20-yard outside zone run. I think Al Golden's probably pissed about that play. It's more of some of those, 4 or 5 yarders where, hey, you want to run a little quick off tackle play and Jack Kaiser hits you and you fall down for 4.5 yard gain. All right, cool. Take that. Because you know what you didn't do on that play? You didn't throw the ball down the field to Cole McDonald. You didn't throw the ball downfield to Reggie Virgil. You know what I mean? Like, sure. Okay, we'll take that. I mean, there's some of the reasons that Brett Gabbert was able to kind of run and scramble was because they weren't worried about spying on him. Because if Brett Gabbert's scrambling for 8 yards, you know what he's not doing? Throwing the ball down the field to his receivers. So against certain teams, you live with that. And would you do that if you're playing Riley Leonard? No, because once he gets into space, he can do some, right? But against Brett Gabbert, he's not going to hurt you there. He's going to pick up the first down and slide, but he's not scoring. And so I think to a degree, some of that they were okay with. And that's why the end result, if you take out, I'm frustrated with the rushing yards, and you just look at the end result, they held this team way below their season average, over 100 yards below their season average, because they said, we're going to make sure you don't do what you do best. And if you're going to beat us, you're not going to beat us with the second best thing you do. Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame doing what they do best. And so in this game, Notre Dame said, that's not going to happen to us against Miami of Ohio. And it worked. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Vince, but that was it was very clear, and nothing makes that more hammers that home than the fact that they played as much cover 2 as they did. Because cover 2 is a pass defense. It's not a run support defense. That's why I loved Mark Schlereth's response to Mel Kiper. NFL needs to ban cover or make safeties play closer in this cover 2. And Mark Schlereth was like, you want to stop teams from cover 2? Run the football. That's football 101, brother. I mean, that's been true since we were kids. You know what I mean?
It's so stupid that he wants to ban a defense, but whatever. That's a different conversation.
Yeah.
For
but I thought that was I mean, it was very clear that Notre Dame was like, we dare you to run the ball because you're not going to beat us running the ball. And they weren't. They were not going to beat Notre Dame running the football.
No, gosh, no. And at the end of the day, you look at the 110 yards of rushing, you're like, that's not good enough. But then when you look at the big picture like that, and it's like, okay, they kind of allowed. They kind of did it on Notre Dame's terms, I guess is the best way to put it. And there's certain things that I think they still could have cleaned up in the run game defensively and maybe not given up quite as many yards. But I do understand where you're coming from. And now that you can see it when you watch the All-22. Let's just put it that way. Mm-hmm. It made sense why they did what they did. Yep. So there you go. Next point we want to bring up defensively is kind of some of the, and we've seen this a couple of weeks in a row now, in my opinion, some issues with motions and shifts. Actually, we've seen it against MAC teams.
Two of the last 3 games.
Yeah, that's right.
Because Miami, Ohio actually watched the Northern Illinois film and said, hey, that worked. Let's do that.
We can do that too.
Like, no, we're Purdue. Let's just keep doing what we do.
Right.
Nope. I thought, that happened. That reared its ugly head a little bit in this game as well, Vince, in my opinion.
And they took advantage of it. Miami of Ohio took advantage of it to a degree. There was a sequence early on in the game, and I didn't mean to step on you there, Brian. There was
that's what a conversation about. I don't know why you guys continue to do this. Nobody on the planet cuts people off more during these shows than me. So when you do it to me, you don't have to apologize.
That's great.
We're having a conversation.
I got you.
Just roll with it, brother.
All right, here we go. So there was a sequence early on in the game where they were taking their running back and they were motioning him out to be a wide receiver. Okay.
Yep.
This is the
second play of the game. Are you talking the first drive?
Yes, it's the first drive.
So set the scene. It's the second play of the game.
Right. So they motion out the back to the left side, and Notre Dame's response to that is they brought Adon Schuler over to cover the back out of the backfield, right? Well, he comes out very, very high on that. And the first play.
And no urgency getting in there.
He's late, very late. In fact, I feel like if I remember it right, the line, I think it might have been Kaiser, kind of turned around and it's like, you got to go. I remember that right. But anyway, the running back kind of runs a go. They do. I can't even remember what the play was, but it didn't go to the running back, right? I think it was the very next play, if not the 2 plays later.
His very next play, Vince,
very next play.
Same exact formation.
Yes, they motion
Same
the back.
formation.
Same thing. Schuler's late, kind of getting over. This time,
No urgency.
He runs a comeback, and it's
just like a little
wide
stop route,
open.
right?
It was wide. I mean, wide open,
Yep.
easy pitch and catch, and they gain a bunch of yards. I think it was a fair first down, to be honest with you.
It was a first down. I think they got 12 on the play. I'm looking at here. It was. Is that the first quarter? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a 2nd and 3 play. They threw an incomplete. It's 9 yards. So it's 3rd and 3.
Okay.
It's 3rd down, and that got the chains moving.
But they got plenty for the first down. I mean, the pitch and catch was one of the easiest throws that you're going to make because Notre Dame hasn't done well moving with the offense in pre-snap. And that one stood out to me. I mean, that was such an obvious mishandling of a back just lining up out as a wide receiver. I mean, it was a very simple motion. It wasn't anything that they haven't seen before. And I have no problem with Don Schuler being the guy to cover him, but you got to do it faster. And you can't stay that high on him.
That urgency
especially
that we
in
talk
that
about.
moment.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's that urgency we talk about. And it's like, that's one of those things where it's like, they'd never done this. We hadn't seen it on film before. It was like, look, guys, you got to kind of have a plan for that. Exactly. Like, hey, a team motioning a back out of the backfield is not like rocket science. It's like, it's not that, you've got to have a plan for that. And they didn't. And there were some other things they did. They ran a stack motion with a post-snap switch, and then a Don Schuler in the corner kind of run into each other because they clearly weren't prepared for that. And it got the guy open for a nice gain, moved the chains. One of their better runs, inside zone runs of the day, is when they go in motion and they motion to a 3-by-1. The Mike linebacker bumps over like a stack, and the wheel goes out, and it just opens up an inside zone cutback lane, like just easy open cutback lane and there was nobody to fill. There just were some things where Miami was able to probe Notre Dame a little bit to get a couple plays, and it had no impact on the game. And from the standpoint of it wasn't something like it was going to cost them a game because they're not quite as creative as Northern Illinois was with it. And they couldn't really generate any big plays with it. But there were some things where they would go in motion and send Cade McDonald across. And then the safeties are going over, and Notre Dame is like rolling their safeties, and this guy's coming down, and then you've got to chase Cade McDonald. And they couldn't get to him. So, I mean, it resulted in a couple good plays. It's more so like you've got to find some answers because when you play a team that's got better talent than Miami of Ohio, it can create some problems. So I was a little frustrated that part hadn't been adjusted. You hadn't found it because here's the deal. A good coach, and Al Golden is a good coach. So I don't think this is going to continue to be a problem. It shouldn't anyway. You start to say, okay, we've picked up on some things the teams are doing to us because they know they just can't line up and beat us. They got to do some stuff to generate. So I was told this story about Harry Heastan. He would go into games against some certain teams, and he would just start throwing blitzes at his team and looks and fronts that they never faced before, or that team had never shown on film. Because his thing was, I'm going to make sure that my guys are prepared because I know that team knows that they just can't line up and do what they do against us. They're going to have to do something different. So I'm going to do some things to put my guys in some stressful situations to make sure they're prepared for it. I told you a story about how a head coach I worked for, Joe Fincham, we're getting ready to play. Actually, your son has taken a visit to this school who the head coach is now at a Division I school. Gotcha. And he's like, Brian, I just want you to, because normally I'd have to watch film as the GA and break down film and run their blitzes and stuff. He's like, I just want you to throw whatever you want at us this week. And so I'm like making blitzes up to the point where he's like, okay, that's enough. We're good. But his point was, if we can pick up all this crazy stuff, then there's nothing that they're going to throw at us that we can't handle. And at some point in time, Coach Golden's like, okay, this is what teams are going to do. They're going to do some of these funky things to try to create some looks to get guys in positive matchups. We have to have a plan for it, even if it's not necessarily something that we've seen on film. And if that team doesn't go to that, and they just think that they can run their base offense against us, then, we'll be ready to celebrate another victory in the locker room. You know what I mean? And so that's something they're going to prepare for. And once again, that was something that the very little success that Miami, Ohio had, a good chunk of that came on stuff like this. And Notre Dame's going to have a plan. And it also speaks to how dumb Purdue was for not Like
Seriously.
every coach, you look, it's not about, oh, let's do what Northern Illinois did, but it's like, hey, this gives Notre Dame problems. We need to figure out within what we do offensively how to take advantage of that. And
Right.
Miami, Ohio I'll say this about Miami of Ohio. That is a very well-coached football team. Very well-coached football team. And Chuck Martin called a very good game. He just doesn't have the horses. He doesn't. And that was the problem. But coaching-wise, they did some very good things. Very good things.
Right. Agreed. Let's talk about something a little bit more positive when it comes to the defense. And not that we weren't being negative or anything, but man, these young kids.
The whole keys to victory. I mean, we were pretty positive during a lot of that.
For sure.
Yeah.
I was being more sarcastic than anything else. But the young guys on this defense, Brian, I mean, they're making plays now, but I can only imagine what this is going to look like in a couple, even next year, later on this year, but in a couple years. Holy cow.
Well, you went into this game, Vince, and you're like, okay, Pateljo's out. He'd been your best defensive end, maybe your best defensive lineman so far in the season prior to his injury. You're not playing Josh Burnham again because of an ankle injury. He was probably your second best defensive lineman through the first 2 games when he got hurt. And you're like, all right, what are they going to do? Boubacar steps up and just dominates. Junior Chialamaka had, without question, the best game of his Notre Dame career. Like, you saw the Mike linebacker instincts in this game. And, like, a perfect example. So you talk about big moments, Vince. The biggest moment of the game happened because of a couple younger guys, a true sophomore and a redshirt sophomore. First one of the game is that Christian Gray interception. Great recognition by Christian Gray, drives through 2 DBs, and breaks up the pass. Like, that's not supposed to happen on that route. And Drake Bowen does a nice job of kind of getting out and forcing the quarterback to kind of throw wider than maybe he would have liked. He couldn't lead him the way he wanted to. But then on that same play, they dropped Junior Chialamaka instead of rushing him because they were in a true 3-by-1, like with nobody close. It's the running backs in an even alignment to the right. That is we're throwing the ball, everyone, at the 5-yard line. It's a very clear passing situation. So Al Golden calls for Junior to drop. And so Junior takes 2 steps back, and his Mike linebacker instincts kicked in. Because remember, Junior came to Notre Dame as a Mike. He looks over, he sees the ball. What do linebackers get taught to do? Follow the ball. You see the ball in the air, go to the ball. So Junior sees the throw. He starts taking off to the ball. Christian breaks it up. Junior's there to come over. If he's A, pass rushing, or B, does what most DNs do and just watches the ball, he's not there to pick it off. And then you see, like, later in the game, you see Boubacar making huge plays. Like, they get that first down that you talked about, right, where they motion the back out, can move the chains. What killed that drive? Very next play, Boubacar has a great pass rush, knocks the ball out, forces a fumble, minus 14 yards, drive over. You know what I mean? Christian Gray picks off a pass later in the game. Madon Schuler has the really bad penalty, but he also, and we just critiqued him for the not getting over thing, but he also made a lot of plays, getting over top of cover 2, breaking passes up. I thought this was Drake Bowen's best game of the season. I mean, Drake shut down their last chance to score by himself, basically.
Yes.
So it was second down.
2 consecutive plays.
I loved this play on 2nd and 10. So Drake is to the right of the defense, right? And the tight end's to his side. They run a bootleg where the tight end works underneath, and he's going to go to the left side of the defense. And as soon as the ball is snapped, you see Drake go like this, Vince. No. He points to the tight end. And he's like, tight end. And he's like, okay, I'm going. They try to sneak that under route, and as soon as the ball gets there, Drake hits him, knocks the ball out.
And it ends up being incomplete. But even if he catches it, it's like for a
1-yard gain.
Yeah, I mean, it's minimal.
Next play, Drake runs an inside twist, just bursts free, drills the quarterback in the backfield. Now it's 3rd and forever. I think they did they try to kick a field goal, and then Bryce Young blocks it. A true freshman blocks it.
Yeah.
And you're just like, man, the young talent in this team is nuts.
Yes.
And then Benjamin Morrison. So, by the way, I'm told Benjamin Morrison's fine. It's just he came out after. So he was in there in the first series of the third quarter.
Right.
The next series was Leonard's series. So they had Leonard and Christian in. Christian picks the guy off. And then Notre Dame offense, I think that was when they went down and scored to make it 21-3. After Christian's interception, Notre Dame responded by going down and scoring. It's 21-3. And it's like, okay, we don't need to put Benjamin back out there. So let Leonard Moore playing. Guess what? Leonard Moore looked pretty flipping good.
Yeah.
Later in the game, Carson Hobbs almost intercepts the pass later in the game, and you're just like, they got some dudes. Kingston's Kingston. You know what I mean? And
he's just playing.
Yes. And you're watching, like, Boubacar's a NFL player. Adon's an NFL player. Christian's an NFL player. Drake Bowen's an NFL player. Kingston's an NFL player. You're watching these young players, and you're like, dude, they're going to be all right. Bryce Young's an NFL player. Like, when I mean, I don't mean like right now. I mean, like, they are the talent that when their careers are over, they're going to be playing in the National Football League.
Right. And
you're just like, boy, this is a young group, but man, they're super talented. But not only that, Vince, but they had to step up on Saturday because you didn't have Jordan Patojo. Boubacar had to step up. Like, we always say this, like, yeah, it's easy to be the guy when you're not the guy. You know what I mean? Meaning, like, it's easy to come off the bench for your 10 to 15 snaps a game and do your thing. There's no pressure on you. But in this game, like, Boubacar, you're a true sophomore. You hardly played at all last year. You've played a decent amount your first 3 games, but you're still a young pup. Missed almost all your senior year. Hey, bro, we need you to step up and be a playmaker. So what does Boubacar say? Got you, coach. I'm going to dominate Miami of Ohio. And guess what he did? It's exactly what he did, Vince. I mean, PFF had him credited for 3 pressures. And I'm like, there's no way he only had 3 pressures. I can think of 5 off the top of my head. And Junior Telemaka, all of last year, Vince, do you remember? We talked about this. Do you remember how many? Junior Telemaka was the number. He was like 2A and 2B. Him and Josh Burnham last year were 2A and 2B at Viper. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Do you know how many? Do you remember any pressures that Junior Telemaka had last year, like the whole season? Do you know how many total pressures he had all of last season?
Well, it wasn't many because we talked about that position not having a bunch. Yeah, so
it was 4.
Okay.
He had 4 pressures the entire season. He had 2 run stops the entire season. On Saturday in one game, Junior had 2 pressures. They were legit pressures as well. He had a run stuff, and he's a redshirt sophomore, and he had an interception, and then he had a great read on a play where they tried to free release a back. He reads it perfectly, plays it, and blows the guy up. And you're just like, okay, Junior has – there have been games this year, Vince, where Junior did not play a snap on defense. Matter of fact, Junior didn't play a snap on defense in the first 2 games. And the only reason he played 18 snaps against Purdue last week is because Jordan Patojo got hurt.
Because of the injury, yeah.
He wouldn't have played until they were blowing him out had it not been hurt. So Junior's out of the mix at Viper. Got beat out by Boubacar. He's not playing a lick. He could have, this is bull crap. I didn't come all the way from California to sit the bench. This is Bush League. I'm in my feels right now, and I'm mad about this. No, Junior said, I'm going to keep working. And when my number's called, I'm going to step in and play. And this is a bit of an unsung part of Saturday's game. It was true with Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler. They could have been in their feelings after getting beat out. They were starters last year. And they could have been in there. But you know what? When their number was called, they were ready to go. When Boubacar's number was called, he was ready to go. Junior Telemaka had every reason in the world to not be locked in. Now, I'm not saying he should have been. I'm just saying as teenagers, that's kind of where we are when things aren't going our way. Junior stayed locked in. And how do I know he stayed locked in? Because he doesn't play like he did on Saturday if he had mailed it in the first 3 weeks. He doesn't. He did some nice things against Purdue last week. He doesn't do that if he's not locked in. And he comes out on Saturday. And I wrote this in a breakdown, Vince, because we talked about how bad the Viper production was. You just mentioned it. We talked about that this season.
Sure did.
So Boubacar and Junior Telemaka, who were the 1 and 2 Vipers in this game, finished. And I'm going to go down here. I got the numbers here. It was in my. They finished with 7 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, a forced fumble, an interception, and 5 total quarterback pressures. That is big time. And they had to replace your best defensive lineman through 3 games.
Up to this point, yeah.
And they stepped up and said, okay, Jordan's been good. We're going to raise you and play even better.
Sure.
And that was a big part of what I was excited about from this game.
And those kids are going to be huge on Saturday too. Like, they need to continue to be those kinds of players. Now, I'm not asking for the exact same kind of production. It's a different opponent. I get that, but they need to be as effective as they were this past week, going into next week and beyond. Obviously, it can't just be a one-hit wonder. You know what I mean? They've got to continue
because you're playing a weak opponent. And
sure,
right,
sure. We need to see it again.
But that was huge, Vince. But when you watch this game on Saturday and you think of the number of young players that stepped up, either freshmen, redshirt freshmen, sophomores, or redshirt sophomores that made a big impact in this game, and you start to say, like, yeah, I'm a little frustrated with this team right now, but man, I mean, Boubacar Traore led you in tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. He's a true sophomore. Drake Bowen had a pretty good game. His best game so far, 4 tackles, a sack, a tackle for loss. You look at Don Schuler had 3 tackles and 2 pass breakups in the game. He's a true sophomore. Christian Gray had a huge game. Leonard Moore had a really good game. Junior Tamaka's 2 tackles, a tackle for loss, an interception. He's a redshirt sophomore. Jaden Osbury played well in the game. He's a true redshirt freshman. Donovan Heinisch is a redshirt sophomore. Bryce Young made a lot of mental mistakes, but man, he played hard, and he is super athletic. And he's going to benefit from playing a game like Saturday where he did make a lot of mistakes, because now there's film that Bryce can look at and say, okay, this is what you got to clean up. Kingston is a dude. There's a ton of young talent. And this is why I say this defense, I don't know if they've peaked yet, because one of my takeaways was the linebackers still need a lot of work. But you know what? They're getting better and better and better and better. Every week, I feel like the linebackers play better every week than they did the previous week. Every week. And like this defense, that's why I say this defense, as good as it is so far, this defense can and should play a lot better. That's, but I'm okay when the sophomores make mistakes. What I'm tired of is when the veteran returning starters are not doing anything. But they played a little better on Saturday, and I hope that is the thing that springboards them. And here's my hope is, well, we'll talk about that when we preview Louisville, but you watch this young talent, Vince, and when you break down the film, you're like, man, there's so much young talent on this football team, especially on defense, where it's like, and they're not just young and they're good players, but you're talking like that's a future pro right there.
Yeah,
like, that's a dude.
Right.
That's the kind of dude. And that's why I say Notre Dame is making mistakes on defense right now, but their teams aren't able to expose them for it because
talent.
Christian Gray, that was not a good coverage by him. He got beat off the line on his interception, but he's so good that he can kind of recover and still find the ball and make that play. Most corners, when they get beat off the line, they're in, oh gosh, I got to catch up. And then running through the guy and cut PI. Christian was like, I'm good. I'm running right with this guy. Oh, let me find the ball, pick. And you're just like, okay, that's a different cat right there. You watch Boubacar Traore and I mean, he's still got a lot of work he needs technically, but you're just like, they can't block that kid. Right. He's just too talented for them to block. He's too long. He's too athletic. He's too powerful. They just have no answers. Now, some teams down the road will have some offensive tackles that can go toe to toe with him, and he's going to have to improve his technique. But boy, y'all now see why I had him number 1 on my upside grade for that defense coming out of high school. Right. The fact he was so raw, which is why he ranked low. It's also why he didn't play a whole lot last year. But now you're seeing the light go on and you're like, yeah, that's the guy we hoped that we were getting when we broke down film on him. It's a lot of talent there, man. So was my final takeaway, Vince. I don't know if you had some other things that you wanted to get into in that particular instance as well. I think there was we had talked about some of the big moments of the game, which we kind of got into a little bit, the key moments.
I think we
talked about the junior tackle for loss. We talked about the first INT. The second red zone stop, I thought, obviously they made a mistake of trying to go at Benjamin twice, but Jordan Clark made a really nice read on a pivot. They tried to run a pivot route. They were trying to get Jordan to overplay so a pivot route is like you start to go like you're going to run like a crosser, and you try to get the DB to bite on the cross to beat you to the spot, because that's what DBs are taught. Crossing route, beat him to the spot. And then you pivot, work outside, and that guy overplayed, and now I'm wide open. They tried to do that in space on second down, and Jordan Clark played it perfectly. Hey, you're at the 12-yard line. I'm not going to overplay this crossing route. My alignment has me prepared to play your cross. Guy pivoted. Jordan was all over him. He catches it, I think, for like a 4-yard gain, and Jordan brings him down in space. Really good play. And then, of course, they try to, hey, that didn't work. Let's throw a fade route against Benjamin Morrison again. I know it didn't work last time, but maybe it'll work this time.
Played it beautifully. I mean,
he played the first one pretty well. He played the second one even better.
Textbook.
And I was like, yeah, you may not want to do that again.
Right.
And I don't think they did. So yeah, I thought that was a key moment too, because again, it was nothing, and this is their second time they had gotten inside the 10-yard line, Vince.
Mm-hmm.
And look, their red zone defense last year was a huge part of that defense's success. Notre Dame had allowed 6 scores on 6 red zone trips so far this season. Now only 2 touchdown drives, but they held them to 1 score on 3 drives. You had the interception on drive 1. You held them to a field goal on that particular drive. And on the third drive, the third red zone drive is what we broke down earlier. That was the drive where Drake Bowen had the 2 back-to-back huge
and then
plays.
They blocked it.
And that put them way back. They were at the 17, I think, is what they got to. And then Drake had I think it was a -12 loss. So now they're kicking a long 40-yarder that Bryce Young blocks. It's like that's what we saw last year from this red zone defense. And so that was a big part of this game too. Because if you're not good in the red zone in this game, this is a little bit of a different score, Vince.
Yeah.
We may be talking like it'd be 21-13 or maybe 13-7. So I thought that sequence of events forcing that field goal was huge because your offense hadn't really gotten going yet. And your defense kind of held them down until the offense finally figured it out. And that was kind of my big moments. It was those 2 red zone drives were the big moments of this game.
Yeah, the red zone is key for this defense. And remember, 2 years ago, they were awful in the red zone. Remember that? I mean, they were just
well, and that's
great
what
between
this
the 20s.
year, right? Would they be good? Would they? What was going to be the true Notre Dame defense?
Exactly.
And honestly, so far, what we had seen so far was sort of a middle of the two, but leaning closer to last year. Good in the red zone, but not as dominant as last year in the red zone overall. But their red zone touchdown defense had been pretty good, only 2 out of 6. And then one of them they gave up was to A&M, and A&M had to really work for that one. If you remember that one touchdown drive, they had to work. It was not an easy red zone drive for them. And of course, this game they shut them down. So so now teams have had 9 red zone trips this season against Notre Dame, and they've only come away with 2 touchdowns. Like, okay, so yeah, they're pretty much so far back to where they were last year, and that's a good sign. Because you weren't when we got 2 years of when you have 2 years of evidence and they're just polar opposites, you're like, oh, okay, what's the real Notre Dame defense?
Mm-hmm.
And so far we're seeing like it's in the ballpark of this one. So that's my stance. That's my thoughts on that one.
I know we've that's going to do it for our defensive breakdown, but we do have some super chats that we need to get to, I believe. Yep. So let's make sure we get to those before we sign off for the evening for a little Irish breakdown after dark. So why don't you throw those up, Brian? Let's have at it. Patrick McGrain, thank you so much for the super chat. How would we all feel about this game if the score had been 38-13? Same 25-point win, just more scoring.
I don't really look at it as the scoring, Patrick. It's how you got there, right? And if they got to 38 for some of the similar reasons and they played the same way, I'd be frustrated. Having said that, let's say, Vince, that they kick that field goal when it's 28-3, and then they get a late touchdown in the number 2 defense, and Notre Dame scored 38 points because Riley hits a couple of those quick throws early and he doesn't fumble the ball, and I'd feel a lot better about it. So it's not the 25-point win that bothered me. It was the missed opportunities that led to you only scoring 28 points in this game, right? So I understand the point you're making, Patrick. But I'll say this, that's my answer. I do think if Notre Dame would have scored 38 points in this game and won 38-13, and they scored 38 points because Riley Leonard played better in this, I think most people would be happy. So again, I want to give some of our, I was very frustrated with the fan base on Saturday, to be honest with you. You'd have thought that they lost the game, but at the same time, I do understand. I do think a lot of people in good faith were, hey, I'm glad we won, kind of. But I was not happy with what I saw, and that's fair. So I don't know that it was the 25-point win. It was the way that they won 25, which is just a lot of sloppy play. 38-13 probably wouldn't have been as sloppy, if I'm being honest. So I don't think that people would have felt the same way. I probably would have, because it wasn't about the 25-point result. It was about the fact that I probably still would have said you should have scored 2 more touchdowns. That's probably what I said. I don't know what's your thoughts on that, Vince?
I mean, people would have been happier, I think, because
a lot,
because that means the offense probably did some different things and maybe were a little bit more successful.
Riley
and
hit a
things like
couple of those
that.
throws.
Yep,
Right.
exactly. So I think people would have thought differently. Maybe I think I don't think we would have broken down the film any differently, Brian. I don't know that it would have been a whole lot different on our end. And frankly, I wouldn't have been happy that the defense gave up 13. Maybe in your scenario where they gave up a score there, at
against
the
this
end
late in the game
the
against
twos, and maybe Notre Dame doesn't block that field goal that gets them to 13, right? So
yeah, and that's what I was thinking. Like it was 28-3. They blocked that field goal, right? Wasn't it? I think it was 28-3, or was it 21-3?
I think it might have been 21.
Okay, so that would have made it like 21-6. Okay, and
then a
let me
late
see
score.
here. So yeah, so Notre Dame is 21-3, fourth quarter. Let's see here. They had that long drive. Yeah, I mean it was 21-3, and then Notre Dame went right down the field and scored to make it 28-3. So it's been 21-6. Let's say at the time they already had 31. You block that, you go down and get 38, and then they get the ball back with 5:30 left. You put your backups in, and they go down and score. Okay, whatever.
Right.
But if they'd have scored 13 points on the starting defense, I'd have been a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, and exactly. That would have made.
We'd be having a different conversation, but I'd be less worried because defense just wasn't locked in against a bad team. We know that. You know what I mean? That's probably
right. Michael S., thanks for the super chat. Just watched the game for the first time. Not as bad as the supposed from the critics. Definitely Leonard over Angeli. No debate there.
Agree. I love this one from Iden. This is hilarious.
Iden Benami, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it. You don't need to watch IB Nation all the time. LOLOL. Wife just now. Got to multitask, baby. LOL. What's wrong with getting J Love more rock? Let's go, Riley Leonard.
The game plan was designed to try to get Jeremiah Love the ball more on Saturday. It's just their game plan was to take it away, which is why Riley Leonard had 143, yards rushing, because they said, hey, we're going to try to shut down number 4 and 24, which is probably a smart game plan. But
right.
Notre Dame only ran, 65 plays on offense, and 5 or 6 of them were from the second team. Jeremiah Love had 11 carries. They threw him a tunnel screen. He had another catch in the game for 9 yards. He had 12 touches. Jadarian Price had 6 touches, and he averaged a whole yard more per carry. Defense was trying to do certain things to take him out of the game. And so Notre Dame said, okay, we're going to take advantage of that, and our quarterback's going to rip you up. So, and the other thing too is, I understand y'all want to see more Jeremiah Love. I get it. But he still is a true sophomore who is still 210 pounds, has still get some more armor on that body. And you're still in a position at 3-1 to make a run and make a deep run in the playoff. I want Jeremiah Love fresh in November. I care more about him being able to get 20 touches in a much needed win at USC than I do about him getting 20 touches against Northern Illinois.
Yeah.
Not Northern Illinois, against Miami of Ohio, or Purdue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's doing his thing now. He's getting comfortable. He's getting going. And then there's going to be games down the road where you've got to ramp him up and Jadarian up to win the game. And you know what? Notre Dame did that in the opener. They had to get him to rock more and Jadarian to rock more, and they did. And they did their thing. So I'm just there's no need to force that issue right now, in my opinion. In November, you will. He's getting plenty of touches, and he's going to get more and more and more. But again, I know you guys love Jeremiah Love for good reason. He's a freak.
He's awesome.
But number 24 is pretty flipping good too. And through 4 games, number 24 is actually averaging more yards per carry than number 11, or number 4 is, which is kind of nuts, Vince, when you consider that as I say that, here's the part that makes me laugh. It's I'm sitting here talking about how hey guys, Jadarian Price is averaging more yards per carry, and he had a 37-yard run called back from a penalty, but it's 0.05. You know what I mean? It's not Jadarian should be 1A running back because he's 0.05 yards. No, I'm not saying that. I'm comfortable with the roles they have now. The point is they can both tote the rock. So let them both tote the rock. And then when we get into November and hopefully into December and January, they don't have those 50, 60, 70 extra carries on their shoulders. They're more fresh, and good luck stopping these kids when your defense is a step slower because it's late in the year and they're fresh because Notre Dame is using them appropriately early. That's my standpoint. You got two dudes, use them and keep them both fresh because you're going to need them. If this team is going to be the team we hope it is, Vince, it can't be that without 4 and 24 both being healthy and dominating. Can't. You need them both. I'm not wearing Jeremiah down because, okay, you give him, he goes out and runs 20 times for 150 yards against Northern Illinois, but by the time you get to November, he's banged up. Miami, Ohio. Who cares if he had 150 yards against Miami, Ohio?
Doesn't matter.
I want him to be fresh enough to do that against USC.
Correct.
That's where I'm at.
And he will.
I sure hope so. My favorite part of the weekend is people say, you can't beat the best teams on the schedule without a better passing offense. And I'm like, you didn't look at the box score of the USC Michigan game, did you?
32 yards, dude. 30.
Michigan beat USC with their quarterback going 7 of 12 for 32 yards. This is why Sharon Moore should have listened to me a month ago when I said they need to put Alex Orji in the game and go full 2017 Notre Dame on teams. And that's what they did to USC, and it worked pretty well. But yeah, guess what? In college football, outside of Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, there's a lot of teams you can beat the way Notre Dame's playing it right now. That's not a justification or an excuse because I don't want them to just beat USC. Notre Dame's beat USC a lot the last 10 years. I want them to beat Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, Texas, those teams. And in order to do that, the pass game definitely has to get better.
Right.
But when you've got a quarterback that can do what Riley Leonard's doing, where, you're going to beat a lot of teams.
Yeah.
It just may not always be pretty. That's
right.
Like this is Brandon Wimbush. If Brandon Wimbush would have gone 16 of 25 in games, Notre Dame wouldn't have lost a game. If Brandon Wimbush would have gone 16 to 25 for 150 yards in games, they wouldn't have lost a game. Because Riley's not running behind Quentin Nelson and Mike McGlinchey and Alex Bars. Can you imagine the kind of rushing attack Notre Dame would have right now with him at quarterback and what they're doing if he was running behind? If that was the line that Notre Dame had, think about that. Come on. Be crazy.
Oh, go back to that one.
Oh, sorry. Let's answer this one first, and then I'll go back and find that one.
Okay, sounds
We didn't
good.
answer the question. I'm sorry about that.
No, we didn't. But that's okay. It's the one about offensive line, just in case you didn't.
Go ahead. I'm looking for it.
All right.
Yeah, I'll bring it back up.
Yep. Andy Milton fan, thanks for the super chat. Could Onye play big end? Seems too good not to play. I feel like he's not getting enough playing time in the middle, but I don't know about moving positions.
Yeah, let me look at the snap. I don't know that playing him at defensive end is really the answer unless you're playing a team like let's just say this. Let's say Notre Dame was playing Michigan. Okay. What we saw Saturday, that version of Michigan, where it's 220-pound Alex Orji who can't throw a lick, and you've got Khalil Mullins at running back who's 220, and you got Don. And guys, we know they're not throwing the ball. We need to get beef on the field. Yeah, okay. Yeah. You want to kick him out to big end? All right, cool. Fine. But if you're playing a team that's going to throw the football, I would have not even dreamed of playing Jason Onye defensive end against Miami, Ohio. Because you need somebody who can rush the quarterback.
Right.
And that's rushing the quarterback from the edge is not his strength. So I would not have done that, Vince. I would not have done that. So I'm going to keep looking for that other question. Do you remember what the question was, Vince?
Yes, it was during the bye. I can't remember who sent it. It might have been Michael S. But it basically said, during the bye week, do you give Tosh Baker and Sullivan Absher a shot at left tackle? Thanks for the thoughts.
I would.
Something along those lines.
Unless Anthony doesn't improve. If Anthony improves this weekend, then okay, cool. He took a step and he's doing better, and you try and go win with that. But if he doesn't get better, then you're going to have to consider that. And now keep in mind, part of the issue was that Tosh wasn't even healthy the last 2 weeks. So here it is from Raymond. There it is.
Oh, you found it. That was from Raymond.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Sorry, Raymond. I was trying to use the old noggin here, and it didn't work out for me. It says, do you think it's time during the bye week to maybe let Tosh or Sully get a chance at left tackle? Thanks.
Yeah, I'd work him in. I would also consider, I mean, just right now, I would move Gerby Lambert over there just to get some reps in certain situations and see how he handles it. See how well he plays left-handed. Because that's like it is so obvious. He's so obviously their most physically talented offensive tackle. He's just very raw right now. But you watch him on Saturday events, and he still doesn't necessarily know what he's doing, and he's moving people. And he did the same thing against Purdue. He's extremely gifted. I would give all three of those guys a chance in that. Yes, 100%. Absolutely. And I'd even consider no, you know what? I wouldn't do that. I thought I was going to say I'd consider moving Emil Wagner over there and then maybe letting Gerby come in. But like Emil's playing well.
Yeah, I wouldn't mess with that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
completely.
Again, that was my first thought, but I was like, nah, I don't know.
That's something you do in the off season, not during the bye week.
Yeah.
If that's something, you know what I mean? Like if that's what you're trying to do.
You know, maybe you're better there, but you're not as good at right tackle, you know. So it's like, look, Emil's starting to get comfortable. Don't screw with that. Yeah,
right.
You're right. And I knew Vince was going to say that. So it was in my head before I
don't do that. Shiver me fingers. Thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it very much. Nothing to do with the game, but what's the deal the last several years with not wearing their knee pads over their knees? It's just asking for trouble.
Well, number one, I've always thought knee pads only really prevent you from getting bruises. They don't protect you from any major knee injury.
No, not from like ligaments or anything like that. That's what knee braces are for.
Yeah. What I think for me, it's when you are running and your knee hits a guy's helmet, they can provide some protection there from getting a bruise. I always thought the rule was like, I remember when I played in college, like they would walk around and make sure all your, I hated 100%. Having knee pads over my knees, hated them. So I would always try to cheat and get them up a little bit above my knees, always did. And because I didn't like having that, I wanted my knees, you know.
Yeah, so you can move around.
Yeah. And you'd have refs walking around, hey, you know, put your knee pads down. Apparently they don't, because like Riley Leonard's got them suckers like 6 inches above his kneecaps.
Oh, no, listen, we went on a college visit.
Like, I'll just say this, Vince. Notre Dame's DBs are basically wearing Thursday shells. I mean, that's basically what they're wearing in games.
Yes. We like I said, we went to a college visit on Saturday before the Notre Dame game, and the kicker, for example, had pants that went halfway between his hip and his knee, and that was it. Like half of his
that's a game pant, not even practice. Game pants.
No, that was this game look. Okay, college coaches our college referees are just not doing that anymore. High school still does. We not that long. My last year coaching, we got a 15-yard penalty because at the beginning of the game, the referee asked the head coach, "Is your team legally and properly, prepared or whatever?" And you always say yes. But then, a couple of guys were trying to hike up their knee pads, or they cut the knee pads as small as possible and they make them about this big. You know what I mean? And a kid had his knee pads up, 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. That's what assigned to the bench. You get 2 of those, you get kicked out as the head coach, right? So they still do it in high school, but clearly in college, that is not a thing.
Yeah, it's definitely not. Definitely not.
It's not a thing. Ridiculous. And it's not in the NFL either. I mean, both levels.
I don't know about that one. I don't watch that one.
Right. Well, they just don't. Mike Nolan, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate you very much. Why is it seemingly every time there's a ball on the ground, Notre Dame never seems to fall on it? Assume just the way the ball bounces, but still upset.
Well, I mean, they did recover one on Saturday. Emil Wagner fell on one, which was a huge moment because I still believe if they would have, like they ruled it. He had broke the plane, but if they would have been able to review that, I think they would have been
not.
like, he didn't.
He definitely did not.
Yeah, like it wasn't even close. But Notre Dame has 4 forced fumbles, and they have recovered none of them.
Right.
So, yeah. True. And see here, fumbles lost. See, Notre Dame is fumbles. Let's see where they are. They fumbled the ball 4 times and only recovered. So the ball's been on the ground 8 times this year, and Notre Dame's only recovered 2 of them. And they didn't count the one on Saturday, so it'd be 9 times, and they've recovered 3 of them. It's not a good rate. I don't know if it's like, hey, you're doing a good job in practice of working on forcing the ball out, but maybe you're not doing enough to work on recovering the fumble, falling on it properly. Could be it. Some of the times it's just the way the ball bounces, but you'd like to see, because they had that issue last year, Vince. They had a very high forced fumble rate last year, but not a very high fumble recovery rate last year. So, because what was Notre Dame last year in fumbles forced was tied for second in college football at 18. And if you look at where they were in fumbles recovered last season, they had 8. So, yeah, and that's 18 forced fumbles. There's other fumbles that happen that aren't forced. And I think Notre Dame had 6. So, like, pitching the ball, dropped muff snap. That's not a forced fumble, and so there were 6 of those. You had 24 fumbles last year in some capacity, and you recovered 8 of them. A third. Same rate they're on this year, a third. So, yeah, you'd like to see it get better. Last one, Vince.
Reliq, thanks for the super chat. Are we seeing true RPOs or options? Sometimes it feels like the decision was made before they even lined up.
Well, sometimes it's going to look like that. Reliq. First of all, to answer your question, yes, they're seeing a lot of true RPOs, and we saw them last week. This is why you need to be on the board, because I broke down the pass game video and I showed you 3 total examples of true RPO plays that they ran.
Yep.
One was a side adjust to Jaden Thomas. One was the touchdown pass from Steve Angeli to Cooper Flanagan. And then another one was Riley Leonard on an under screen to Eli Raritan. Yesterday, we saw a couple true RPOs. One of them, for example, they actually hit a glance route to Bo Collins in the second half. Did you see that, Vince?
Mm-hmm.
And then the backside slant to Jaden Thomas is also there. Now, sometimes an RPO is you ride it and then pull and throw, like Steve Angeli's was that. It was a ride. If he comes up, you pull and you throw it. Other RPOs are pre-snap decisions. We have leverage on the bubble screen. I'm catching and throwing. I'm pulling and throwing. There's no fake. So sometimes it's going to look like that, where the running backs are running run action, the line's blocking, but the quarterback pulls and he's throwing that bubble screen. So it looks like, well, they're just doing the run fake for show, and it's actually, no, they're blocking this, the receivers are doing that, and the quarterback, some of the RPO throws are predetermined based on how the defense is lined up, right?
Right.
Does that kind of explain it properly, Vince?
I think so.
Sometimes it will look like the decision is made before, because it's not made before they line up. No decisions are ever made before they line up, because you can always check out and do all those type of things. But it's more so once they line up, the quarterback makes the read, and then sometimes it's just going to be, I'm pulling the sucker. And sometimes, like, I'm still going to do a flash handoff fake, but it's like there's no way he was actually handing the ball off there. Like, yeah, because he knew in his head he's going to pull it, but he needed to at least do that to time the play up because of whatever, and that's why he's doing that. So that's why sometimes it does look like that. But yes, they're definitely doing true RPOs and options in this. So, and there's some others that I'd like to see them do. I think they could get real, especially their 2 running back looks. I think they could get real creative with some of the stuff they're doing. Like, look, this is who Riley Leonard is. Lean into it. Get even more what you're doing with your RPO game and your screen game and your run game. So those are definitely things that I could see them doing more of, and like to see them do more of, if Riley can't make the necessary improvements in the passing game. That's what I would like to see. So there you go, Vince. That's it, man.
All right. That's going to do it for this edition of Upon Further Review. Thanks for hanging out with us on a little Irish Breakdown After Dark. Appreciate that very, very much. And make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell. Share with your family and friends. And, of course, join the boards, boards.irishbreakdown.com. Going to be some great stuff up on the boards by this time tomorrow. There's going to be some breakdowns of Riley Leonard's throws and some different stuff. So all 22 coming your way, but only if you are a member of the boards. As far as the upcoming schedule, of course, there will not be an afternoon show tomorrow, because it gives Brian some time to get that stuff up on the board. But there will be an evening show at 5 o'clock, IB Nation Sports Talk. Sean and I will break down Marcus Freeman's press conference that is earlier on in the afternoon. And then, of course, we will have Rapid Fire. And then it will be back to your regularly scheduled programming Tuesday on, where we turn our attention officially to Louisville. It is Louisville week now, Brian, and we're going to break it all down for you, get you ready for that game. And folks, just a friendly reminder, if you don't have Peacock, you're not watching the game on Saturday. So if you need to sign up and get your 1 free month, now is the time to do that. And hey, you can even watch a couple of the episodes of Waking Up the Echoes, or whatever that thing is called, the documentary. Then you can watch the game on Saturday as well.
There's actually some cool movies on Peacock too. I would let y'all borrow it, but I already have one. I'm allowed to let one person watch it, and that's already spoken for. So
this guy right here. I'll be the first one to admit it. Yeah, so make sure you check that out if you want to watch the game on Saturday if you're not going to be in attendance. So without further ado, that's Bryan. I'm Vince, and we will talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Have a great night.